The woman came to the police station to report her husband missing after he had disappeared for half a month. However, the police officer asked her to produce her marriage certificate. The woman came out in a daze. It was only then that she realized that she knew nothing about the man she had been married to for a year. She had never even met his family. Her mother thought that Jimin had come back just to visit her family for work. Unexpectedly, as soon as she put the soup on the table, Jimin felt sick. Her father, however, accused her of being unreasonable. Jimin lowered her head and didn't dare to speak. Her strong father had never looked down on his younger daughter, who had no prospects. Jimin was afraid to tell her family about her secret engagement. She had planned to bring her husband along to formally visit her parents when she returned this time. That night, she sat in the kitchen, dialing her husband's number over and over again, but her first love, who had sworn to love her forever, seemed to have vanished into thin air. The next morning, Jimin felt nauseous again. She had no appetite, so she went to her eldest sister's room and stole a pregnancy test. Looking at the test result, she was on the verge of collapse. Jimin hastily wiped away her tears, afraid that her sister, who was preparing for pregnancy, would see them. In a hurry, she pulled out a business card. Not long ago, Jimin pretended to be the girlfriend of a wealthy man to help drive away his suitors. After contacting the wealthy man, Tae-hun, he drove a nearly worn-out second-hand car to meet her. Before long, the car broke down on the road. Jimin, who did not have a driver's license, was responsible for pushing the car. It was only when she exerted force that she remembered the baby in her stomach, so she sat in the driver's seat and hit the gas pedal directly into a pillar. She was so scared that she broke out in a sweat, covering her stomach as she shouted for the hospital. It wasn't until they arrived at the obstetrics department that Tae-hun realized that he had to cover his face with his hands for fear of running into any acquaintances. However, the nurse kept calling for Jimin's family to come in, so Tae-hun had no choice but to go in. The doctor patiently told them that they must rest during the early stages of pregnancy. The most important thing was not to have sex. On the way home, Jimin glanced out the window and saw her husband, who had been missing for half a month. She was so excited that she didn't know what to do. While urging the driver, she opened the window and yelled, "Rich girl," muttered the taxi driver behind her, wondering what was going on. The man she had been married to for 8 years was telling her to pay attention to the road. Seeing that the distance was getting farther and farther, Jimin quickly took out her phone and wrote down the license plate number. At the same time, she also had a bad feeling. Why was there a woman next to her husband? She took the ultrasound of the baby and deceived herself that her father would not abandon them. Back on Jeju Island, he had proposed so sincerely that they had even held a wedding for two in a church without even informing their parents. Tae-hun, who was hiding his identity, took pity on her and invited her to a big meal under the pretext of returning her phone. Jimin was reminded of the good things her husband had done for her after they got married. Suddenly, she had a pregnancy reaction. Before she could even drink a mouthful of soup, she ran outside to vomit. Tae-hun hesitated for a moment, but then he reached out his hand, waiting for the bus. He can't help reminding this woman to accept the fact that she may have been cheated on. The person who loves you will never lose contact with you unless something unexpected happens. How could Jimin not know that she is suffering? Her tears can't stop flowing. Tae-hun regrets saying the wrong thing. Meanwhile, at home, Mom is tidying up her room and accidentally finds a notebook. When she sees the ultrasound results inside, she is shocked. Tae-hun doesn't know how to comfort the girl, so he stays by her side in silence. Mom calls and shouts on the phone, telling Jimin to hurry back. She dragged Jimin outside to the office and questioned her about what was going on. How could her well-behaved daughter, who had never even been in a relationship, be pregnant? What on earth had you been doing on Jeju Island for 4 years? Mom forced Jimin to contact the baby's father. She had no choice but to call Tae-hun. Unexpectedly, Mom snatched the phone away from her. When she found out it was Jimin's mother, Tae-hun immediately greeted her. After a brief inquiry, Mom forced the other party to visit the house the day after tomorrow. It so happened that it was Jimin's father's 60th birthday. A man should take responsibility. Without waiting for a reply, her mother hung up angrily. Tae-hun was at a loss. Did she mean for him to become a fake son-in-law? Her mother heard that her younger sister was 4 months pregnant. She was anxious and angry. If your father finds out, the consequences are unimaginable. Before she finished speaking, her father was standing outside, pounding on the door. The strong man questioned the mother and daughter what conspiracy they were plotting behind his back. Jimin has been afraid of her father since she was a child and never dares to say more than a few words. That day, the hospital called, and it happened to be Jimin's father who answered the phone. When he learned that his youngest daughter was pregnant, he called his wife outside and scolded her for doing such a shameful thing. His wife begged him not to hit her. After all, her daughter was pregnant. Meanwhile, Tae-hun flatly refused to pretend to be her boyfriend. What's the difference between that and a liar? Jimin no longer insisted. But the problem with used cars is that there are too many safety belts that just won't come off. Tae-hun went over to help, and this scene happened to be witnessed by Jimin's father, who had nowhere to vent his anger. After getting out of the car, Jimin's father didn't say a word and directly dragged Tae-hun out. Jimin desperately stopped his father, saying that this wasn't the person. Taehan let out a long sigh of relief. However, Jimin said that it wasn't the other person's fault, and that it was all my initiative. Seeing that Jimin was about to get beaten, Taehan had to cooperate with the performance. In this way, Taehan stumbled into the woman's house. The aunt warmly welcomes Taehan and keeps praising Jimin for having good taste. The mother is also very satisfied with Taehan's appearance. The father holds back his anger and insists on talking to Taehan alone. He scolds him like a criminal, saying that whoever takes the initiative to get a woman pregnant before marriage is a scum. Taehan pretends to go to the toilet and even tries to escape through the window. The aunt awkwardly explains that the toilet door is broken and cannot be locked. Taehan thinks about it and can only turn to his friend for help. Jimin's father interrogates him when the phone finally rings. Taehan pretends to be in a hurry and must leave immediately. Jimin runs out to thank Taehan but begs her never to find him again. The father seems very satisfied with Taehan and asks his daughter to ask Taehan to come again sometime. The next day, Taehan, who is concealing his identity, is arranged by his grandfather to work at the grassroots level of the company. When the boss saw the president, he immediately bowed and greeted him, and introduced the newcomer from the company. Taehan froze when he heard the president's name. The man Jimin was looking for was called Junwoo. He just wanted to ask something when the president's wife walked over. Taehan blurted out and asked if she knew Miss Jimin. Junwoo immediately froze in place and then vehemently denied it. That day, his wife came to Junwoo's office and her phone suddenly rang. Without thinking, she answered it. But a strange woman's voice came from the other end. Jimin had returned the call because she saw an unanswered call. Junwoo, however, accused his wife of messing with his phone. He knew she hated it when he did that. The rich girl's humble apology. Although her husband said it was a wrong number, her woman's intuition told her it wasn't that simple. Jimin, who was 4 months pregnant, had been looking for her husband. They had lost contact since returning to Seoul. She gritted her teeth and ate something nutritious for the sake of the baby in her belly, but tears welled up in her eyes. Her helpless appearance was all in Taehan's eyes. Taehan had never seen such a silly woman so easily believe a man's sweet words. He was not married and was not legally protected. He really wanted to persuade Jimin to give up. After inquiring, Taehan became even more certain that the branch manager was the person Jimin was looking for. After working in Jeju Island for 2 years, he only got to his current position because of his wife's connections. Afterwards, Taehan, who had concealed his identity, came to his own hotel to wash dishes. Junwoo, however, gave a glamorous interview to the media. Taehan gave him a fierce glare. When they met in the elevator after work, Taehan couldn't help but question Junwoo. A man should speak clearly and not let a silly woman search endlessly. As a bystander, he really couldn't say it. When he got home, Junwoo thought about seeing Jimin in front of the company before. It was clear that the woman would not give up until he explained. Jimin was overjoyed when she received a call from her husband. She was so afraid that something had happened to him. Junwoo, however, simply said, "I only got married to trick you into having sex with me." Jimin innocently asked what was wrong with him. Junwoo said, "I was just playing with you. Now I've lost interest in you." After saying that, he hung up the phone. He even removed the battery. Jimin, who had been tricked into marriage, crouched on the ground and wept bitterly. But she didn't want her family to know. When she saw her aunt coming, she quickly wiped away her tears and pretended that nothing had happened. Later, Jimin came to bring her father lunch and saw Junwoo's news in the newspaper. Then she clutched the newspaper and went to find that scumbag to confront him on the spot. Jimin came to the company and asked the man at the reception desk if he was the company's president. The woman couldn't help but stop and ask what she wanted with her husband. Just then, Junwoo walked out and a girl walked up to him, calling him father. After a moment of panic, Junwoo immediately reacted, pretending to be a reserved guest and quickly finding an excuse to get rid of his wife and daughter. Jimin was on the verge of collapse. This happened to her in her first love. What should she do now? Junwoo didn't feel the least bit guilty and was sure that the kind and silly woman wouldn't dare to destroy his family. Just then, the little girl pushed open the office door and saw her aunt covering her face and crying. Jimin was about to tell her she was 4 months pregnant when she looked up and saw the little girl. Junwoo was so scared that he immediately got up and made sure his wife wasn't there before he let out a sigh of relief. Jimin glanced at the little girl and realized that it wasn't the right time to talk. She cried as she walked out of the office and just missed the lady looking for her child. Meanwhile, the little girl kept asking her father why the aunt was crying. Junwoo told his child to keep the secret and not to tell anyone about what happened today. Mom was also crying because she was looking for the girl, so the girl blurted out the sad words and cried, "I'll keep your secret." Junwoo quickly interrupted and changed the subject. A marriage filled with lies is an illusion of happiness. It was getting late and Jimin had not returned yet. The mother had to contact Taehan, but her husband snatched the phone and ordered him to come early the next day to take his daughter back to Jeju Island to work. Taehan also looked aggrieved, but he had no choice. Jimin felt sorry for her parents, but for her mother, her daughter's happiness is more important than anything else. The next day, Taehan obediently came to pick her up. The whole family thought that Jimin was going back to Jeju Island to work and then get married. Only Taehan knows how much Jimin is suffering. She is 4 months pregnant and can no longer undergo a simple abortion because she is so stupid. Jimin has been disliked by her father since she was young. Yesterday, she didn't directly expose the scumbag Junwoo because she didn't want to hurt innocent people, but she is pregnant, so she must let that bastard know. The two met at a cafe. Junwoo questioned her about whether she wanted compensation. Jimin simply poured cold water on the scumbag. She chased after him, but Junwoo pushed her down. Taehan saw it all. Taehan immediately grabbed Junwoo and told him to get out and apologize. Junwoo arrogantly said, "What are you?" Taehan said, "I'm Jimin's fiancé." Then he punched Junwoo in the face. If Jimin hadn't stopped him, something terrible would have happened. The next day, Jimin fought back tears as she reluctantly terminated the 4-month-old fetus. The doctor advised her to think carefully about the decision, as there would definitely be risks. She also had to find a guarantor to sign. The scumbag who had cheated on her was celebrating their wedding anniversary at a hotel. The rich girl vaguely sensed that there was something wrong with her husband, but Taehan's image as a loving husband and family man was too deeply rooted. In the 8 years they had been married, he had carefully prepared gifts for his wife on every holiday. The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Junwoo lied that it was a harassing call and didn't answer it. Then he made an excuse and went to the bathroom to call back. Jimin wanted him to be her guarantor to get rid of the baby, but Junwoo felt that she was being unreasonable and hung up the phone hastily. Jimin, full of hatred and anxiety, suddenly remembered the hotel room number that Junwoo had called to book during their meeting earlier that day, so she immediately rushed over and forced the receptionist to call the guest in room 408. The kind-hearted Jimin didn't want to hurt her innocent wife, so she didn't mention the pregnancy on the phone. She asked the other person to meet her in the park the next afternoon to end it once and for all. Unexpectedly, the arrival of the boss disrupted their appointment. As the president, Junwoo could only be by her side and entertain her without the slightest slack. Taehan, who was concealing his identity, met his grandfather in the toilet. His grandfather mocked him for being a useless guy. His eye was still injured. Jimin kept sitting in the park waiting. Her patience was also running out little by little. The other party's phone had been switched to voicemail. Who should he ask to be his guarantor? Taehan had just finished work when he received a phone call from Jimin's father, pressuring him to get married. He only said one thing before being scolded by the other party. Taehan could only suppress his anger and contact Jimin. He had wanted her father to stop harassing him, but the other party had something to ask instead. Jimin really couldn't think of anyone else to be her guarantor except for Taehan, whom she had met by chance. Taehan was about to go crazy, but he still softened his heart and signed. Jimin knew she owed the other person a huge favor, so she didn't want to trouble anyone else to accompany her during the surgery. Her trembling hands betrayed her, but she kept pretending to be calm. In this way, she walked up to the operating table. Tears involuntarily streaked the corners of her eyes. At that moment, Junwoo called, learning that it was the dishwasher. He was actually a little angry. Taehan told him not to talk nonsense and to come to the hospital as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, Jimin came out shakily and then collapsed to the ground. After she woke up, her first reaction was to touch her stomach. Although her rational mind told her not to keep the baby, the strong fetal movements on the operating table just now seemed like the baby was calling for help. Taehan asked her to think clearly. After all, in conservative South Korea, unwed mothers are no different from sinners. That day, Jimin was hit by Junwoo's wife. Seon was immediately scared and at a loss for what to do. Junwoo rushed to the emergency room as soon as possible and quickly found the stupid woman he had cheated into marriage with. Jimin, who was unconscious, also woke up at this time. In a daze, she thought she was dreaming, until Seon came over and asked her if she was awake. She remembered that Jimin had met her at the company last time. Fortunately, it was only a scratch and there was no major problem. Jimin couldn't stand the hypocritical face of the scumbag and was about to quietly leave the hospital, but was stopped by the other party. In short, Taehan hoped that she would take good care of her health. Jimin had nothing to say to the liar and left directly. Subsequently, Seon ran out and questioned Taehan why the lady left without a word and refused to be compensated. Taehan's guilty conscience was written on his face, and as a result, he heard the conversation between the doctor and the nurse again. The couple unexpectedly learned that Jimin was pregnant. Junwoo frowned, unsure whether the child was related to him. The hurt Jimin couldn't bear to give up the baby that had already had movements, and planned to hide and give birth to the child secretly. The father thought she had already returned to Jeju Island, but when the leader called, he realized that his daughter had lied to him. Unable to contact Jimin, the father went to Taehan to settle the score. Taehan lied, saying that he had personally sent Jimin back. Jimin's father suspected that he didn't want to take responsibility at all. He kept putting off the marriage. Junwoo happened to pass by and heard some of the conversation. Taehan also had a hard time explaining himself, but he was pushed to the ground by Jimin's father. Taehan was tied up and put in the car. He secretly sent a text message to Jimin, but Jimin had a strong pregnancy reaction and it took a long time before she saw her phone. Facing her powerful father, Jimin could only rub her hands together and beg for mercy. She was not going to get married. Her father thought that Taehan was shirking his responsibilities, so he grabbed his collar again and lectured him. Jimin cried and confessed that Taehan was the one she pulled over to pretend to be her boyfriend. Because my mother found out I was pregnant and kept pressuring me to get married. Now that it's come to this, My father just wants to know who the father is. Jimin said that the man had already passed away. My mother felt incredible and fainted directly. For Jimin, that man is dead. Apart from being sorry to her parents, she doesn't feel that unwed mothers are guilty. Children are innocent. No one has the right to take a child's life. Taehan is in a state of confusion. He really wants to find out if the child Jimin is carrying is his. It turned out that because his wife was infertile, they had adopted a daughter from an orphanage. The next day, he called a friend to find out Jimin's home address. At that moment, his wife suddenly pushed open the door. Taehan hastily hung up the phone, but his wife still saw the address he had written down. She casually asked, "What's up?" Taehan's guilty expression was all his wife saw. His wife pretended to leave without paying attention. The father wanted to force Jimin to get an abortion. The submissive Jimin revolted for the first time. She grew up facing a strong and stubborn father, always on edge and anxious. So for her, the father role is not that important. I will try to be a good mother and give the baby in my belly all my love. After hearing this, the father flew into a rage and directly pushed Jimin out. Her mother's heart was about to break. She finally understood why her daughter had been away for so many years, but she didn't dare disobey her husband's orders. Jimin sat outside and silently shed tears. Only those who have experienced the damage of their original family can understand. She thought the scumbag was her salvation, but it turned out to be a bottomless pit. The baby in her belly is her only source of comfort. No matter how hard it is, she is not afraid. She grabbed her luggage and turned to say goodbye. Junwoo followed the address and came over. The two happened to meet at the intersection. He directly questioned Jimin about whose child she was carrying. Jimin was determined to keep the baby, so she lied and said it was someone else's. Junwoo was half believing it. Knowing Jimin, he couldn't possibly find a new love that quickly. Jimin, however, insisted that he didn't believe it and went to find the father of the child to confirm it. After returning home, Junwoo changed his clothes and went to take a shower. His wife took the opportunity to look through his pockets and quickly wrote down the address on it. Jimin, on the other hand, went to the sauna to spend the night. She wanted to go back to Jeju Island to work tomorrow. Taehan asked her where she was, and she didn't want to be kicked out of the house, did she? Jimin didn't want to trouble the other party anymore, so she lied and said that everything was fine and let him rest assured. Taehan asked her to call when she arrived at the place, and she must be careful of the little people. On the other side, the old father could not sleep all night, and kept thinking about what it felt like to be unable to say anything to his little daughter. His wife hid in the kitchen and cried bitterly for Jimin's future. In the morning, the couple met Taehan, who was hiding his identity, in the elevator. Because of Jimin, Taehan always deliberately provoked Junwoo. Junwoo just couldn't believe that the child was the dishwasher's, so he called the emergency room to find out how long Jimin had been pregnant. Unfortunately, no detailed examination was done in the last car accident, and the hospital is not sure. Meanwhile, Jimin finally got on the bus to the airport. The job in Jeju Island can support her to raise the child alone. But then a colleague called and said, "You've been fired." Seon went to the address on the note the next day. She wanted to know who her husband was looking for. As soon as the owner came out, she went up to ask. Seon learned that the old man was living with his family and let out a long sigh of relief. She was about to drive off when she saw a familiar figure. Jimin, who had been kicked out of the house, dared not send the delivery to her home, so she changed the address to her neighbor's. Seon insisted on treating her to something to drink. She had not had a chance to compensate her for hitting her last time. Jimin could not refuse and went to the cafe with a stiff upper lip. As they chatted, Seon asked how she and her husband had met. Jimin looked embarrassed. Right now, she just wanted to keep the baby in her belly. She didn't want to expose the scumbag for cheating on her. At that moment, Junwoo called. His wife asked him to guess who he was with. Seon, acting on her woman's intuition, asked Jimin what she thought of her husband. Jimin didn't give a direct answer. Everyone has a different opinion, but the other person kept asking for her contact information. There was nothing she could do, so Jimin reluctantly gave her number. When she got home, Seon wanted to see her husband's reaction. She even lied and said that Jimin had praised him for being very attractive. Junwoo pretended to be calm and got away with it. That night, Seon's mother-in-law called her downstairs and tried to urge her to go to the hospital for a checkup. It's been 8 years. The old man has been dreaming of them having a child. She also likes the adopted granddaughter, but it's still not the same as her own. Seon felt extremely depressed. Even though her husband was right next to her, she always felt a sense of unease in her heart. She questioned her husband if he loved her. Unfortunately, she couldn't hear the answer she wanted. On the other side, Taehan completely does not understand Jimin's actions. He believes that women who leave their children with their fathers are crazy, just like his mother. She left after giving birth to him. That is why he still cannot forgive his grandfather and insists on not getting married and having children. Jimin never imagined that the seemingly carefree Taehan would have such an experience, but she believes that his mother definitely does not regret giving birth to him. Being pregnant is a happy and magical experience. Every day is full of hope. This is probably motherly love. Taehan drank cup after cup, finally getting drunk. His friend came to pick him up, but he wanted to take in Jimin. who had nowhere else to go. The friend's son helped out. That's how Jimin ended up in the rented room of 3 men. The friend praised Jimin for being pretty. The boy kept saying, "You look funny." I thought it was true. Taehan closed his eyes and cursed. Taehan is an irresponsible guy. Jimin quickly covered Taehan's mouth. Junwoo, however, is apprehensive. Fearing that Jimin is pregnant with his child, his wife has seen it all. After 8 years of marriage, they still can't have a child. She mistakenly believes that her husband is also troubled by this. Jimin seems to have vanished from the face of the earth. No one can find him. Junwoo can only call Taehan to the office to inquire about his whereabouts. There is one thing he must personally confirm before he can believe it. Taehan questions, "What proof do you have that the child Jimin is pregnant with is yours?" Junwoo can't figure out why the little dishwasher is so arrogant. But the other party was introduced by the head office, so he couldn't dismiss him easily. He had no idea that Taehan was the sole heir of the group. Grandpa came over to spy on him whenever he was free, and also asked his subordinates to arrange more work for Taehan to do. That day, Jimin was asked out by Taehan. When she arrived at the restaurant, she realized it was her mother and aunt. After some hesitation, she went in, but she heard that her family wanted to trick her into going home and then take the baby away after it was born. Jimin left in tears, although she knew that her family was only looking out for her best interests, but she just couldn't give up on her baby, who already had a heartbeat. When they got off work, the 2 men ran into each other in the elevator again. Junwoo, who had nowhere to vent, started trouble for no reason. The 2 men got into a fight. Seon saw her husband lose his temper for the first time. She couldn't figure out why he was arguing with a low-level employee. Could it be because of that woman? As far as she knew, Jimin was Taehan's fiancé. Junwoo immediately said, "With my current status, how could I possibly look at a poor part-time worker?" Seon was convinced that she would not lose to Jimin in any way. On the other hand, Jimin was so tired that she fell asleep even in the bathroom. But her pregnancy was still discovered by her boss. No matter how Jimin begged, her boss just told her to leave. So she dragged her luggage home, but she never dared to go in. Seeing her father's old figure, she couldn't help crying again. Jimin knew in her heart that when she became an unwed mother, she had let her parents down. After wandering alone for a long time, she unconsciously arrived in front of Taehan's shared house again. Taehan's eyes filled with pain when he saw her. Every time he saw Jimin, he would remember his mother who died in childbirth. He also never understood whether it was worth risking everything for an unborn child. Taehan woke up in the morning and found that Jimin was gone. He was so scared that he looked everywhere. His friends were woken up by the noise and thought something terrible had happened. It turned out that Jimin had gone out to buy food and wanted to make them breakfast. Taehan angrily shouted back, "Will starving to death kill you? Next time, you must tell us before going out. What if you disappeared?" The next day, Jimin went upstairs with her shopping. Junwoo told her to go for a genetic test to determine who the father of the baby was. While struggling, Jimin accidentally fell down the stairs, covering her stomach and crying for help. Seeing a car, Junwoo hid behind a wall. Taehan quickly found Jimin and took her to the hospital as soon as possible. Junwoo struggled for a long time from afar, but still didn't dare to go in. It was very late before he returned to the company and sat alone in the driver's cab, racking his brains. The appearance of his wife disrupted his thoughts. Junwoo, who had returned to the office, immediately contacted the emergency room of that hospital to find out Jimin's current situation. However, he was told to speak to the patient's family instead. Helpless, he could only hang up hastily. Although the baby was saved, the current situation is very dangerous. There is a possibility of premature birth or worse. The doctor hopes that the pregnant woman is mentally prepared. Jimin opens her eyes and asks about the baby in her belly. She feels a chill run down her spine at the thought of what just happened. She begs him not to tell her parents about it, not wanting to make them worry. Taehan stays by her side 24/7, even helping to serve her food. The kid is even more of a pushover than his father. Taehan wants to wait until Jimin's health improves before telling her the truth, but Junwoo can't resist visiting her in the hospital. Taehan is surprised to see him there, but then he guessed that this guy must have set Jimin up to fall down the stairs. Taehan immediately punched Junwoo, who misunderstood him and thought that the baby had been lost. He wanted to know how Jimin was doing. Taehan refused to answer. Junwoo was already in a bad mood, and as soon as he got home, his wife asked him what had happened. It didn't seem like a work problem. Junwoo had 1,000 reasons to say that it seemed like his wife was being unreasonable. Seon quickly apologizes, saying that she is being too sensitive. The doctor explains the dangerous situation to Jimin. The hospital cannot guarantee that the baby will be born normally. The pregnant woman is also taking a great risk. Jimin just feels sorry for her parents. Before being admitted to the hospital, her mother only slightly loosened her grip and decided to support her daughter's choice. During the meal, she kept persuading her to go home and try to convince her father to agree. "You will understand when you become a mother." Jimin tears up while eating. Poor parents all over the world. The father also followed quietly. He felt very uncomfortable watching his wife and daughter secretly kneading. Back to the present. Jimin feels that this is all retribution for her own rebellion. In order to escape her strong-willed father, She ran away to work after graduating from high school. She easily believed in other people's sweet words, which led to the current situation. Taehan advised her to preserve her body, which is now the most important thing. That day, Seon secretly followed her husband to find out what was bothering him. Sure enough, her husband's car drove in the opposite direction of the company and finally stopped in front of a hospital. Seon was puzzled when she heard a man scold her husband. She didn't understand what a miscarriage had to do with her husband. Did her husband do something to hurt her while he was in Jeju Island for 2 years? Seon didn't dare to think anymore. She gripped the steering wheel and vowed to protect her family. Jimin couldn't understand why Taehan lied. The baby was obviously fine. Taehan just wanted to help her get rid of the scumbag. After a while, Seon pretended to run into Jimin and asked her about the baby. To avoid trouble, Jimin lied to Taehan that the baby had died. Seon let out a long sigh. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, she hurriedly took her leave. Junwoo, who thought he had solved the problem, was in a good mood. His wife quietly looked at him but dared not question him. The reason she was so humble was because she could not bear children. Seon was just curious if her husband regretted getting married. If you had nothing, would you still love me? Junwoo said, I like everything you have. Seon used drinking water to hide her embarrassment. Weighing the pros and cons of the choice, she said so bluntly. Then she continued, if you choose a poor wife, it must be love. Junwoo's face fell after hearing this. There seemed to be someone in his heart. Even if there was, it was only a momentary infatuation. Jimin hated Junwoo, but she wanted to protect the baby in her belly. She cheered herself and the baby over and over again. Taehan saw it all, but he still decided to notify Jimin's family. Her mother absolutely forbade Jimin from risking her life to give birth to the baby. Jimin didn't want to hurt her mother's feelings, so she left the hospital and left a letter behind. She vowed to come back healthy and bring the baby back. Her mother's heart was broken. She blamed her husband for only caring about his face and causing her daughter to be like an orphan who didn't dare come back to her home. Taehan also seemed to have lost his soul. He was distracted at work. Junwoo didn't know that the dishwasher was the boss's grandson and wants to ask Taehan to give Jimin some money as compensation for the abortion. The depressed Taehan can't help but punch him. He finally gets a call from Jimin. Taehan asks for the address while holding back his anger. Jimin refuses to disclose it. As he hangs up, he seems to hear Jimin shout sister. Grandpa notices that Taehan's recent state is not right. The grandfather and grandson converse in the toilet like secret agents. Grandpa wants to force Taehan to go on a blind date. At 33 years old, he refuses to fall in love. Is there something wrong with him? Taehan doesn't bother to explain. Every day after work, he goes from church to church looking for Jimin. Finally, he sees the silly woman he thinks about every night through the window, but he doesn't bother her. That night, he sits alone on the roadside drinking. That day, Jimin came to the hospital for a prenatal checkup and ran into Junwoo. She was so scared that she turned around and ran. Seon just glanced at her back and followed her to make sure it was the woman. Unaware, Junwoo followed suit. At this time, Jimin was pulled aside by Taehan. Junwoo asked his wife what was wrong. Seon explained that she seemed to have seen an acquaintance, but she didn't say who it was. The couple came over to do in vitro fertilization. This may be their last chance. Hugging each other, Taehan and Jimin awkwardly separated after a while. Jimin wondered why he was here. Taehan lied that he came to see a friend. Afterwards, he took Jimin to eat barbecue. Jimin really thought that they had met by chance and was especially happy to see him again. In fact, Taehan had been worried about her. This silly woman. Jimin's appearance, however, made Seon feel uneasy. She finally couldn't hold back and asked her husband what had happened with that woman during the 2 years he was in Jeju. Junwoo told a pack of lies, saying that he had only had dinner with Jimin a few times. Not to mention, how could I look at such a humble woman? Junwoo grabbed his wife's hand and promised her that he would never act recklessly again. To ease her worries, his wife was half believing, but there was one thing she could never figure out. Why did Taehan say that her husband caused the miscarriage? In order to stabilize her marriage, she decided to overcome her fear and try to have a child again. Junwoo told the doctor not to tell his family about his wife's infertility, and just say it was his problem. This is also the reason why Seon is grateful to her husband. The mother did not believe that her son was perfect in her heart, so she scolded the doctor for being a quack. However, she did not know that Junwoo had achieved his success today because of his father-in-law. Seon endured the pain and did another test tube in order to fulfill her mother-in-law's wish. She was full of hope for good news, but was disappointed again. After 8 years, all the humiliation came flooding back. Seon didn't know that her husband, who was obsessed with success, didn't care whether or not they had their own flesh and blood. That day, Taehan took Jimin out for a walk. After a while, Jimin felt severe pain in her stomach. She grabbed Taehan's hair and dragged him all the way from the park to the hospital. Jimin accidentally meets Junwoo, a scumbag. On her first day at work, the head waiter forces her to deliver drinks, so she bravely does it. Seon's face changes when she sees Jimin. When she is embarrassed, a colleague accidentally knocks over an object nearby. They say that subconscious reactions are the most genuine. Junwoo only releases his protective hand a moment later. Jimin quickly crouches down to clean up the mess. Taehan, however, pulls her outside to let her rest, and asked her to take off her uniform and go back immediately. But Jimin was anxious to earn money because her son had been prematurely born and had not yet been discharged from the hospital. However, the person who wanted to hide could not escape no matter what. Seon was curious why she had disappeared for such a long time. Jimin made excuses and said that the couple could not know about her giving birth. She hurriedly fled and left her handbag in the bathroom without noticing. Seon saw the milk bottle inside and immediately chased after her. Jimin hurriedly said that it was not hers, and thought that everything was peaceful. Junwoo's mother-in-law refused to let it go, and immediately started scolding Jimin for being so uninhibited. She even called the manager and demanded that she be fired. Seon tacitly approved of her mother-in-law's actions. She was also angry, but had nowhere to vent. Jimin wanted to wait until the baby was healthy and discharged from the hospital before taking it home to show her parents. However, her mother-in-law found her first. Seeing her daughter's emaciated face, her mother burst into tears. She couldn't imagine how much pain Jimin had endured alone. Afterwards, she went to the hospital to see her grandson. This is the child that her daughter risked her life to give birth to. Jimin told her mother not to cry. She and the child will be happy. Meanwhile, the staff found Jimin's wallet in the banquet hall. Junwoo heard this and came over to inquire and said that he would return it to the owner. When she got home, Seon was still bothered by what happened during the day. She was upset when she thought about her husband's reaction. Junwoo went to the bathroom and secretly looked through Jimin's wallet, but found the child's photo. He dared not think anymore. Could it be that he had been cheated? His ex-girlfriend had never aborted. His wife suddenly pushed open the door and scared him. He quickly hid the photo. At this time, Junwoo's father-in-law called and said, "I don't have any offspring. Your huge business empire will be yours sooner or later." Junwoo believed him. That's why he tolerated his infertile wife in every way. In fact, President Lee had long since found his grandchild and wanted to cultivate him to become his successor. But the strong Taehyun is unwilling to accept this. He would rather live in a simple rented room with his friends, and even take in an unmarried mother with nowhere to go. At night, he has to give up his room and share it with his father and brother. Their snoring is so loud that he can't sleep. Taehyun sneaks out and bumps into Jimin. For a moment, he can't help himself and he actually wants to kiss him. Seon was at her husband's office when she accidentally found a red wallet in a drawer. When she opened it, she found the woman who had made her so uneasy. Seon tried to calm her excitement. The secretary then came in and said that the president wanted the list of waiters for the opening party. Unsurprisingly, Jimin's contact information was on it. She clutched the document tightly, her patience at an end. In fact, Junwoo had already taken the child's photo from the wallet. He suspects that his ex-girlfriend has secretly given birth to a child, so he asked the secretary to find out the contact information. After going downstairs, Junwoo ran into his younger sister pestering the dishwasher. The girl didn't know Taehyun's real identity, but she fell in love with him at first sight. From the conversation between the two, Junwoo suspected that Jimin was living with Taehyun, so he followed the other person secretly. Sure enough, he saw the two of them come out together, so he followed them all the way to a children's hospital. After the two of them had gone far away, he slowly walked over. Junwoo saw the last name of the premature baby in the incubator, and guessed that Taehyun was not the baby's biological father. Junwoo was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Jimin would ruin his future. Everything he had now was given to him by his father-in-law. When he returned home, his wife directly threw out the wallet and questioned him. Junwoo angrily said, "Don't you know that I don't like people touching my things?" Seon didn't want to be led by the nose anymore and insisted on a reasonable explanation. Junwoo then softened his tone and said that the staff had found it and handed it to him, so he was checking the contact information to return it to the owner. Seon still felt uncomfortable. She originally suspected that the two had an unusual relationship, and even if the wallet was to be returned, she should do it herself. Taehyun, on the other hand, was hopelessly in love with the unmarried mother. He mustered up the courage to grab Jimin's hand. This time Jimin did not refuse and accepted the other person's feelings. The next day at work, Jimin suddenly received a call from Seon asking her out to return the wallet. Seon brought the four together to see how her husband would react. After a few words, she asked how they got together. Junwoo, however, gave a disdainful smile, thinking that the two were still in a fake relationship. Unexpectedly, the two lovers in love confessed their love for each other. Seon sensed her husband's subtle changes, which made her even more uneasy. After receiving the wallet, Jimin realized that her son's photo was missing. She instantly became nervous and asked who had found the wallet. Seon said it was an employee. Taehyun guessed who it was and got up, wanting to take Jimin away. Seon looked at the couple, who looked grave, and was puzzled. Taehyun said, "Ms. Seon, you are even more naive than I thought, but I still want to thank you for treating me to a big meal." That day, feeling a little guilty, she went to the hospital to visit her child. Jimin was afraid that the other person would take away his son, so he tried his best to argue that he was not the biological father of the child. Unexpectedly, Junwoo came over just to distance himself from the situation. No one can stop him from becoming successful. Jimin's mother did not want her daughter to suffer anymore, so she gathered her courage and told her husband about the premature birth. Although her husband was very angry after hearing the news, he finally relented. Early the next morning, he ran to the hospital and looked at his child breathing hard through the glass. Jimin's father relented. He had once threatened to cut off his relationship with his daughter if she dared to give birth to the baby. He finally relented. After the grandson was discharged from the hospital, he asked the mother and son to move back in. Jimin was deeply moved. She went to see her father for the first time in more than half a year. She kept apologizing to her father. Junwoo placed his son's photo underneath the family photo. Because his wife was infertile, he adopted a girl. The mother, who knew nothing about it, always thought it was Junwoo's problem. Until one day, she accidentally flipped through a report. So she angrily shouted at Sian to come back. Without saying a word, she slapped her, facing the beating and scolding. Sian shed tears of humiliation. For 8 years, she had failed time and time again in the test tube. No one knew how much physical and mental pain she had endured, but she still said sorry to her mother-in-law with tears in her eyes. However, her mother-in-law refused to relent, scolding her son for being a white-eyed wolf. Together with his wife, they had deceived her. What's the point of success if you don't even have a child? However, the ambitious Junwoo didn't care about lineage at all. This was all of his own volition. He begged his mother to stop being unreasonable. Seeing his wife, who had been beaten, Junwoo quickly hugged her to comfort her. Sian's heart was so tired that it was about to suffocate. Unexpectedly, in the middle of the night, mother-in-law smashed her dowry. Those were the tableware that Sian's late mother bought. She was on the verge of collapse. What crime is there in not being able to bear children? Choosing the wrong family is the greatest sorrow. The young couple who are about to move out are reluctant to part. They meet in the living room in the middle of the night and take photos with the gifts they gave each other as a memento. Taehan hugs his girlfriend in hopes that she can rely on him. He doesn't want her to say that she doesn't match him anymore. Taehan is working part-time at his family's hotel when a girl chases after him. This scene happens to be seen by Sian. She kindly reminds her sister-in-law that the other man has a fiancé. Sura doesn't believe that Taehan would fall for a single mother. Sian was shocked to hear this and realized that Jimin had given birth to a child. She immediately questioned who the father was. Sura said that it wasn't Taehan anyway. Sian suspected that her husband was unfaithful, so she asked Jimin why she had lied about having a miscarriage. Jimin stammered and explained that she had thought the baby would not be able to be saved at that time. At a critical moment, Taehan helped out by lying and claiming to be the father of the child. They will soon hold a wedding. Sian is doubtful. The next day, without warning, she suddenly pays a visit. As soon as she enters, she says she wants to see the baby. Jimin refuses, saying the baby is asleep. But Sian is insistent. She mutters to herself, "Does the baby look like its father or its mother?" Jimin remembers that there is still soup simmering in the kitchen. Sian's arrival makes her uneasy, but she can't figure out what the other woman's intentions are. Later, Sian rushes home. Her mother-in-law was furious when she saw her. She couldn't bear children and lied that it was the man's problem. Recalling the recent events, Sian had already decided that her husband had done something to hurt her. She was about to leave when her mother-in-law stopped her. Her mother-in-law angrily said, "How dare you ignore me?" Sian was in no mood to argue and told her mother-in-law to talk to her later. One day, without any news from his wife, Junwoo called. Sian held back her tears and made an excuse that she wanted to rest at the hotel, even though it was a day. Her husband was not allowed to come and keep her company. In fact, she was waiting for the results of the identification. It turned out that she had secretly pulled the baby's hair just now. The unaware Jimin was completely immersed in sweet love. Taehan gave her a full sense of security. He didn't care that she was an unmarried mother. The old-fashioned father had long been conquered by his grandson. With his wife away, he took on the important task of taking care of the baby. As soon as Junwoo arrives home, his mother can't help but complain about how your wife is so arrogant. You've spoiled her. Sian finally gets the results of the paternity test. She holds her breath as she opens the envelope. Although she is mentally prepared, the result still comes as a shock to her. Sian then goes to her mother's grave and cries, telling her of her grievances. What should she do? For 8 years, she has put up with her mother-in-law's nagging about having a baby, only to be betrayed like this in return. After crying, her adopted daughter called to say that her grandmother wouldn't give her any food. Sian was heartbroken and cried, saying that she would go back immediately. As soon as she entered the door, her mother-in-law started to make things difficult for her again. She wanted to find a surrogate. Sian told her mother-in-law to face reality. Your son only wants to get rich and doesn't care about children at all. Then she went upstairs and forced a smile in front of her adopted daughter. The next day, Sian burned all the bed sheets and quilts. She had already lost her mind with hatred. Even the things her husband had used felt dirty to her. Then she told Sura to take the adopted daughter out and stood alone in the dining room, drinking. Sian saw her husband come back and sarcastically said, "Have you been suffering a lot during this time? You didn't even dare to recognize your son." Junwoo stubbornly argued that he had nothing to do with that woman. His wife wanted to tear his mouth off. Then she threw the paternity test at him. "Jimin's son and you are father and son." Junwoo was silent, thinking of how to shirk the blame. It was obvious that he had cheated on the young girl by pretending to be unmarried. but he lied and said it was an accident after drinking. Sian vented her pent-up emotions in a hysterical fit and passed out from excessive sadness. Junwoo quickly hugged his wife and rushed to the hospital. Just as they arrived at the door, they met his mother. The mother-in-law, who had been longing for a grandchild every day, suspected that Sian was putting on an act. Although he had been a bit over the top recently, he shouldn't be so fragile. Then she went to the young couple's room and saw the document bag, but she didn't take it seriously and casually threw it aside. Sian, who had just woken up in the hospital, tried to pull out the four. Junwoo insisted that it was a one-night mistake and there was no mental betrayal. He had never seen his wife look so heartless, so he knelt down and begged for forgiveness. For the first time in their marriage, the arrogant Junwoo begged his wife on his knees. Sian, torn between love and hate, as a veteran of the company, her father had always supported her husband until he became the president. But Junwoo's ambition didn't stop there. Moments later, her adopted daughter called, crying and begging her parents to come home. Sian's voice trembled. What if she divorced? What would happen to her daughter? She didn't want to just give up and leave her family. Her mother had already passed away. Sian didn't want to let her father down and her husband down. After crying bitterly, she returned to the hospital room and woke Junwoo up. She asked him if he didn't have any feelings for the mother and son. Junwoo gave a positive response and accepted all the conditions his wife had proposed. As long as there is no divorce, she can torture him until he completely erases his resentment. Jimin doesn't want to have anything to do with the couple and just wants to quietly raise her son. But she never dreamed that her boyfriend-in-love was the undisclosed grandson of President Lee. Sian hates it when her husband touches her and doesn't even want to share the same bed. Junwoo sleeps on the sofa every day. Who would have thought that the mother-in-law would suddenly run to the second floor and see the scene? As soon as she saw her daughter-in-law, she chased after her and scolded her. You can't have children, so what gives you the right to be so arrogant? Junwoo defended his wife and even demanded that his mother not mention having children again in the future. If you don't want me to get a divorce, behave yourself in the future. Of course, mother-in-law didn't want to give up her cash cow. She just felt strange. Why had her once docile daughter-in-law suddenly changed her personality? Did her son do something to offend her? It seemed as if the woman had been possessed by Sherlock Holmes. She suddenly remembered that before her daughter-in-law fainted, she saw a delivery in her room, so she immediately rushed into the office and rummaged around. Sure enough, she found the torn wrapper in the trash can. When the mother-in-law called to ask about it, she learned that it was from an appraisal agency. She immediately guessed that her son must have done something bad outside. That day, she went to the home of a fellow villager she hadn't seen in many years. Junwoo's mother narrated her troubles in the third person. As she was talking, the sound of a child crying suddenly came from inside. In order to cover up the shame of her unmarried younger daughter, Jimin's mother had to lie and say it was her eldest daughter's adopted child. Junwoo's mother saw that the little one liked it very much. She had always dreamed of having a grandson like this. She was just curious why the child had her mother's surname. Perhaps she was lonely. Junwoo's mother wanted to go see the little baby whenever she was free. As a result, as soon as she got off the bus, she saw Jimin get into her daughter-in-law's car. At this time, she still didn't know that Jimin was the younger daughter of her fellow villager. She only remembered that the other person was a waitress at the banquet. Junwoo questioned how the two had met. Sian improvised and said that Jimin was the pastry chef at the supplier. The mother-in-law became more suspicious the more she thought about it. The atmosphere between the two was strange. What business was there to discuss in the car? In fact, Sian had asked Jimin out to test her future plans. She even hoped that Jimin and her son would leave Seoul. Jimin, who had been cheated on, had no attachment to Junwoo. What's more, she had already met someone better. The young couple stood at the door reluctant to part, but when the old father saw them, he was worried. What kind of family would accept an unmarried mother with a child? But his wife was happy. Taehyun's parents had died young, and his husband had complained that even if his father were in heaven, he would still be crying. Junwoo learned by chance the true identity of Taehyun. He was furious. He had thought that President Lee had no children and was the guy he hated the most. Grandpa had planned to reveal Taehyun's identity later, and kept criticizing him for his poor acting skills. Who would have thought that a nail would take Cinderella to the top of her life? The attentive Jimin immediately screwed the nail back into place. She would never have guessed in her dreams that the wealthy chaebol in front of her was her boyfriend's grandfather. President Lee called his newly promoted grandson to him. Grandpa exaggerated and said if it wasn't for this young lady, I would have passed away today. The more he scolded, the angrier he got. It wasn't until his assistant reminded him that there were many guests around that he lowered his voice. Jimin feels bad for meddling and is afraid that her boyfriend will lose his job because of her. Taehyun doesn't think so. It's better if he gets fired. He doesn't really want the job anyway. He's afraid of his girlfriend's nagging and can only change the subject because of their chance encounter. President Lee tastes the dessert made by Jimin. He has a better impression of this young girl. While eating, he praises them. Their hotel is lacking pastry chefs like this, so he immediately tells his assistant to recruit Jimin into the company. Then he asked his assistant if his grandson had a girlfriend. The assistant assured him that the young master's taste in women was just like his own. so he could rest assured. Jimin's father was worried about the burden Taehan would place on him in the future, and hoped that Taehan would think carefully about the situation. After all, his younger daughter's situation was quite special. Taehan promised that he would treat the child as if she were his own. Jimin was moved to tears. His aunt stopped by the stairs to eavesdrop on Taehan's touching confession. The news that Taehan was President Lee's grandson quickly spread. Mom immediately ran upstairs to confirm with Junwoo, and got a positive response. She then turned around and held her daughter's face in her hands, as she told Sura to make sure Taehan didn't get away. Junwoo, however, looked speechless, not only because he wanted to take over President Lee's company, but also because he was the father of Jimin's son. His wife couldn't help but sneer at this relationship. It's really interesting. Sura, however, was anxious and regretted letting an unmarried mother get there first. Hearing Jimin's name, Mom's face changed. The last time she saw her daughter-in-law and Jimin together, they seemed strange. Could it be that the grandson she's been looking for is right next to her? On the other side, after seeing the plan Jimin made, President Lee was very satisfied, so he invited her to his home to give her face-to-face advice. Jimin brought a cake to the luxurious Manpyeong manor. She was overwhelmed. She couldn't help but be proud to have the president's approval. After work, Jimin showed off her superb cooking skills again. The president had a great time eating. The most important thing is that the simple Jimin is not at all constrained. It's just like treating her own grandfather. She was just about to leave when Taehan came over. Jimin was very surprised to meet her boyfriend here. The chairman immediately enthusiastically introduced him as his grandson. Mother-in-law is weird. She often eavesdrops on Junwoo and Seon's conversations. After learning that the paternity test has not been destroyed, she immediately rushed home and rummaged through everything. She dreams of having a grandchild, even if it's a bastard. She doesn't care. When she saw the paternity report, she was so excited that her mouth hung wide open. Jimin never thought that someone would compete with her for her son. The real identity of her boyfriend made her feel inferior. Taehan kept saying sorry and wanted to bring her in to formally introduce her to her grandfather. Jimin refused. She wasn't ready yet. Taehan stopped pushing and had to first confess to her grandfather that he was dating Jimin. After hearing this, her grandfather didn't object, although the conditions of the two sides were very different. But the girl is kind-hearted and enthusiastic about her work, which is very pleasing. Taehan hid the fact that his girlfriend had given birth to his child without being married. He knew in his heart that even if his grandfather was open-minded, he would not be able to accept it for a while. Subsequently, the chairman called in his assistant and asked him to investigate the woman's situation. Jimin returned home soon after Junwoo's mother came looking for her. Ginki saw the baby crying for milk and reached out to take it. Jimin's mother stopped her in the middle and asked Ginki what she wanted. Ginki explained that the baby was her family's bloodline, and even reversed the black and white, saying that Jimin had no shame and seduced his son. Jimin was furious. The child was her bottom line and she claimed that the father of the child was already dead. She told her mother to hurry up and get rid of Ginki. Ginki was unreasonable and didn't know the cause and effect, deciding that Jimin had taken the initiative to throw himself at her. How dare a little waiter take an interest in his son? Then she slammed the paternity test on the table. Back in the room, Jimin contacted Junwoo and questioned him why he had changed his mind. No one is taking my son away from me. Junwoo hangs up the phone and Seon walks in. After learning about her mother-in-law's behavior, her suppressed emotions explode. She asks her husband what he plans to do. Junwoo vows that he will never acknowledge the child. Jinki says that she will use any means necessary to get her grandson back. Jimin cries and tells her mother that she is sorry. Her mother only asks her one thing: did you know that the other person was married? Jimin replied in tears that she didn't know. The family then realized that innocent Jimin had been cheated. Meanwhile, the assistant had passed on the wrong information to the chairman. Since Taehan had been by Jimin's side from the early stages of her pregnancy until the birth, he naturally thought that the baby was his son's. The chairman was overjoyed when he heard the news and clapped his hands. That day, Seon asked Jimin out again. As soon as she sat down, Jimin was splashed with a glass of cold water. She cried and said that she was also a victim. She just wants to quietly raise her son. Seon has reached her limit. She even asks her to take the child and leave. She stumbles out of the restaurant. She feels sad that she has become the most hated person. Then she rushes into her husband's office and vents her resentment like a madman. Jimin doesn't regret giving birth to her son, but she is also aware that the existence of her baby will inevitably hurt another innocent woman. She begins to struggle with whether to take the child and hide in a place where no one knows. When Junwoo came to his mother's room after work at night, he made his position clear and said that he would not recognize the child. However, no matter what Junwoo said, his mother was determined not to give up. That was her family's bloodline. She even planned to let her daughter-in-law raise it. Seon was on the verge of collapse for so many years. Besides squeezing the family, what had she done for herself? Jinki didn't care. The next day, she brought a large amount of things again to visit her grandson. Jimin's mother tells her to watch her tongue. Jinki doesn't think it's a problem, she's just like you, living like a fool. so she deserves to be cheated on. The two women are instantly enraged and yelling at each other. Jinky tells her to call her son over for a face-to-face confrontation. Jinky storms off and happens to meet Taehan walking Jimin home. She had originally wanted Taehan to be her son-in-law. When Jinky returned home, she kept racking her brains to figure out how to convince the young couple to give her grandson back. The old father soon learned about this. He sat alone in the kitchen, drinking. He was so angry at the thought of his daughter being cheated on that he couldn't sleep. The next day, Jimin's father arrived early at the other company and insisted on teaching this bastard a lesson. When he heard that he was Jimin's father, Junwoo couldn't help but smile with contempt. Up until now, Junwoo had never considered himself at fault. It wasn't like he forced Jimin to give birth to the child. What's more, Jimin is already engaged to be married to someone else. What responsibility does he need to take? Jimin's father couldn't stand it anymore and grabbed him by the collar, scolding him for being inhumane. He warned Junwoo not to let his mother see the baby again. Junwoo, however, told him to go back and educate his daughter properly. Taehan wanted to convince his girlfriend to lie to their grandfather together. Unexpectedly, the chairman decided to visit Jimin's house at the last minute. As soon as he got off the car, he saw the young couple walking with their baby. The chairman couldn't wait to come over just to take a look at his great-grandson. He pointed at the baby and asked Taehan, "This is your son, right?" He even took out his reading glasses and walked up to have a closer look. Seeing the happy old man, Jimin didn't know what to say. The chairman was afraid that the son would hurt his great-grandson, so he insisted on sitting for a while where they lived. He hoped that the two would get married as soon as possible. The grandson could choose between a luxury car and a mansion. The chairman couldn't let go of the baby. "Who does the little guy look like?" The assistant by his side was very talkative. "The child looks a lot like the chairman." Jimin doesn't want to deceive the elderly, but Taehan won't let him. Jinky, on the other hand, racked her brains every day to get back custody of her son. She even complained that her daughter-in-law, who couldn't bear children, was narrow-minded. "If you really love your husband, you should accept your child." Seon, who came downstairs, let her mother-in-law do whatever she wanted. "If you choose a grandson, you'll lose your son," because Seon believed that her husband wouldn't give up his wealth and glory. Jinky was suffocating with anger. Seon is no longer the daughter-in-law who lets her boss around. The impatient chairman is waiting impatiently for his grandson. He makes excuses all day to delay the meeting ceremony. He simply goes to a place where he can't be bothered. Jimin's father. At this time, Jimin's father still doesn't know about Taehan's illustrious background. The chairman bluntly says that after the young couple gets married, he will hand over the management of the Queen Group to his grandson. Everyone knows about the famous company. The father is shocked. He originally felt that his younger daughter was not good enough for Taehan, and heard the chairman misunderstand that the child is his great-grandson. Jimin's father felt like he was sitting on pins and needles the whole meal. When the two were about to part ways, they happened to be seen by the eldest son-in-law. He was curious about how his father-in-law knew the chairman and immediately stopped the car to ask. But the old man was worried and advised Jimin to prepare for the breakup. How could such a powerful family possibly agree to their marriage? His older, unmarried aunt has always praised Jimin for being amazing, while her mother sighed with worry, hoping that Taehan would just be an ordinary person. Taehan was afraid that his girlfriend would waver, so he even asked Jimin to take responsibility for him. That day, Jinky crept into Jimin's house. After realizing that no one was home, she had an outrageous idea. Her grandmother had only gone to the corner to buy some watermelons. Within 10 minutes, the baby had been stolen. Jimin was beside herself with worry. She didn't need to guess who had done it. She tried to contact Junwoo but couldn't get through. When she returned home, Sura reminded her that this was a crime. Jinky didn't think it was a big deal and not only switched off her phone, but also told her granddaughter to call her brother. As soon as the couple entered the house, they saw the baby. Junwoo was fascinated by his son for the first time. Seon suppressed her anger and slammed the door. A moment later, Jimin finally got a call. Junwoo said that the baby was at his house. Greedy Jinky is reluctant to return the baby and makes all kinds of excuses to keep the baby, but she is afraid that she will really be taken away by the police. Seon, born of resentment, immediately rushed out when she heard the doorbell ring and vented all her anger on Jimin, as she had nowhere else to do so. "I warned you to be quiet. Leave here immediately. Don't regret it when the baby is taken away." Seon warned him to quietly leave Seoul. Jimin just wants to pick up her son, she shouts hysterically. Taehan followed closely behind. He went in to pick up his son instead of his girlfriend. Junwoo was very resistant. He reluctantly handed the baby over to the other woman until his wife returned. He said he didn't care, but as soon as he turned around, he opened his arms and reminisced about the feeling of holding his son just now. Seon couldn't bear to see her husband like this, and she didn't even allow him to sigh in front of her. Now she is forcing her husband to make a choice, either his mother-in-law or her. The unknowing Jinky instigates her granddaughter to speak up for her every day. As soon as her foster parents get off work, she rushes in to ask when her brother is coming. Fearing that his wife is angry, Junwoo quickly crouches down to explain that it was her grandmother who was mistaken and that that is not her brother. The relationship between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law has reached a point of no return. Junwoo has no choice but to propose splitting up the household. The widow mother can't believe her ears. She has raised him with so much hardship, and now that he has become successful, he can abandon the useless people. Jinky made a threat that if he dared to leave this family, he would consider him as no longer his son. Junwoo, who was blinded by greed, was still stubborn. He turned around and told his younger sister to take good care of their mother. Jimin was also suffering a lot. She planned in her heart to leave this city, but she couldn't bear to leave her beloved boyfriend. That day, Junwoo deliberately told some weird rumors in front of his father-in-law, so the chairman immediately called Jimin to his house. These days, Jimin has been living with a lot of guilt. When confronted, she simply confessed everything. She didn't want to lie to the old man anymore. In order to prevent further complications, Jimin lied and said that the father of the child had died. Even if the chairman liked Jimin, he could not accept his grandson marrying such a woman. Tae-hun, however, ran in and said that he would not waver, regardless of his grandfather's consent. Jimin forced her boyfriend to go back and apologize to her grandfather. "You're going to make me a sinner like this." Tae-hun didn't want his girlfriend to suffer the slightest grievance. After the argument, Jimin and her boyfriend made a 3-point agreement. No matter how angry he is, he must not lose his temper in front of the elders. They should discuss things properly and hope that he can put himself in the other person's shoes to slowly diffuse the grandfather's anger. Tae-hun is very obedient, and the next day he softened his attitude in hope that the grandfather would agree to the marriage. However, they had another fight in less than 3 minutes. The grandfather and grandson were locked in a verbal battle, neither willing to compromise. Tae-hun suddenly remembered what his girlfriend had said. For the first time, he humbly begged the grandfather to relent. He could not bear to have an unpromising grandson always around. After days of deliberation, he finally decided to give in. If she wanted to marry into the family, she would have to give up her child. She didn't need to give an immediate reply, but Jimin refused without hesitation. She then left the manor in tears. From the moment she gave birth to her son, she had been prepared for the worst, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness for life. The chairman flew into a rage. This was his bottom line. He would never agree to his grandson taking over the family business. Jimin fully understood the old man's position. She couldn't continue to be greedy, so she asked her boyfriend out and broke up with him, reluctantly telling him many lies. "I'm too tired of being with you. I'm too good for you." She didn't give Tae-hun any chance to say anything. Tears filled her eyes as she walked out. It seemed like just yesterday that they fell in love. How could Tae-hun not understand her heart? Jimin's father came out and said that his youngest daughter had left with her baby. Although he was very sorry, he still felt that the two of them could not continue to be entangled, and it would only add to the pain. He thanked him for taking care of Jimin for so long. Jimin stood in front of the window, peeking in. Tears flowed unstoppably down her face. Tae-hun is still not giving up hope, so he calls out his assistant. And, as he had guessed, it was Grandpa who had caused the problem. Jinky, however, is determined to get his grandson back, even if it means a separation from his daughter-in-law. Sura complains to her brother and sister-in-law about their lack of compassion, saying that no matter what, they cannot abandon their mother. Sien tells her to go out and ask if there is any wife in the world who would accept her husband's illegitimate child. As a woman, the mother-in-law completely disregards her own feelings. Junwoo dares not say a word and slinks away from the place of conflict. Tae-hun, on the other hand, starts to take action. Every day, he rings Jimin's doorbell. He doesn't believe that his girlfriend would quietly leave with the baby. After an unknown number of days of suffering, Jimin finally lets him in. Tae-hun, however, makes her swear on the baby's life to prove that she doesn't love him. Jimin can't bring herself to say it. Tae-hun promised that he would get his grandfather's permission. They are going to spend the rest of their lives together. Can't they wait a few years? The young couple embraced and wept. The family was happy for Jimin. They were afraid that she would miss out on such a good man, but the old father was worried. Given Jimin's current situation, she shouldn't marry into such a family. Meanwhile, the chairman found out through investigation that Jimin's son had followed his mother, which meant that the father of the child might be married, so she could not put the baby on the man's household registration. The chairman was furious, thinking that his grandson had been cheated by an unmarried mother. The next day, he invited Jimin's father to his office and took out a check for 3 billion won, asking his daughter to leave Tae-hun. Ordinary people probably couldn't earn this much money in their entire lives. Jimin's father, who had led an honest life, returned the envelope. During the conversation, Tae-hun suddenly pushed open the door and scared his grandfather, who quickly hid the check. Jimin's father knew that the chairman would never approve of the marriage. Tae-hun questioned his grandfather why he would humiliate someone by taking their money. The chairman, however, scolded his grandson for being good for nothing and for not knowing who the father of his child was. The grandfather and grandson had a quarrel and parted on bad terms. On the other side, Jinky fell ill because she was about to be separated from her family. It was clear that even if she died, her son would not stand by her side. She had to change her strategy. After living together for 8 years, Jinky humbly begged her daughter-in-law for the first time. First, she admitted that she had been a bad mother-in-law before, because she couldn't bear children. She was so harsh. Sian didn't want to hear a word. In short, she refused to raise her husband's illegitimate child. Jinky grabbed her hand and earnestly persuaded her. Blood ties cannot be severed. What will you do when your husband regrets it? Sian's heart wavered a little, but she still did not immediately agree to her mother-in-law's request. Jimin's father asked his daughter to break up as soon as he returned home. It was obvious that Jaewon had regarded Jimin as a liar. If you want to live in peace, just end it here. Watching his father's back, Jimin couldn't help but shed tears. After becoming a mother, she could better appreciate the difficulties of her parents. After a painful struggle, Jimin decided to leave with her child. Jimin went to the countryside, and her heart felt as if it had been emptied, because she refused to answer the phone. Taehan could only use voice messages to express his longing. Jimin hardened her heart and deleted the photos of the two of them. Junwoo learned about this and deliberately provoked Taehan. From fake boyfriend to fake father, he sarcastically called Taehan the world's unluckiest person. Taehan pushed him against the wall and asked what he wanted. Junwoo, this villain, collected a lot of evidence of Taehan's violence, with the aim of getting him fired from the company. Jinky played the grieving widow every day in order to get her grandson back. Junwoo, who didn't have any biological children, also began to waver, but he doesn't have the courage to propose to his wife. The next day, Taehan is arrested and taken to the police station because he had previously hit Junwoo's car. Junwoo walks out with a smug smile. He knows in his heart that the fertility-obsessed chairman will not help his grandson over such a trivial matter. As expected, the grandfather, who is at odds with Taehan, refuses to come to his rescue, but he asks his assistant to investigate what hatred the two men have. That day, Jinky found a house purchase contract in her daughter-in-law's room. It was clear that the young couple really intended to split their assets with her. When Junwoo returned, she tearfully questioned him whether this had been the plan all along. Sian heard everything outside the door and began to reflect. She didn't know when she had become so ruthless. The adopted daughter came running again, begging her mother to raise her younger brother. Afterwards, Taehan was interrogated at the shareholders' meeting. In order not to put his girlfriend in the limelight, he could not reveal the feud between the two. The chairman found out the truth and immediately found Jimin and explained to her the recent situation of Taehan. She hoped that she could help her grandson explain and reveal the true face of Junwoo. After seeing the chairman off, Jimin struggled for a night. After all, doing so would label her son an illegitimate child. But she still decided to help Taehan clear everything up. At this time, the company was about to fire Taehan for using violence. Unfortunately, Jimin happened to meet Sian in the hallway. Sian understood her purpose and promised to help her save Taehan. After all, disclosing everything would not benefit anyone. Sian said to Jimin, "You should think about your own life." Jimin said, "Are you afraid of losing face?" Sian gave the baby a meaningful look. She threatened Jimin that if they broke up, they would fight for custody of the child. Jimin had no choice but to compromise. When the deal was sealed, Junwoo received a note from his wife. He stood up in a rage and announced that he was withdrawing the lawsuit. Jimin had just returned to Seoul when she met Junwoo. Junwoo, however, was staring at the baby in rapt attention. This scene happened to be seen by his wife. Sian instantly reddened her eyes. Jimin had wanted to return to the countryside immediately. However, her father went to the station to stop her. He didn't want her to suffer alone in a foreign place, but Jimin always had nightmares when she returned home, dreaming that her child had been taken away. After much thought, she decided to leave Seoul. First, to escape Junwoo's family. Second, to force her to break up with her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Jinky racked her brains to persuade her daughter-in-law to fight for custody of the child. She was willing to do anything as long as she could bring her grandson back. Sian couldn't help but recall her husband's expression when he saw his son. The adopted daughter also kept arguing that her mother should take back her younger brother. Sian hesitated for a long time before finally giving in. But there was one condition: the child's mother must leave the country forever. Jinky is so excited that she grabs her daughter-in-law's hand and promises to take care of all the problems. She feels like she's dreaming and shouts for her daughter to come over and discuss a plan. Sian then goes upstairs and asks her husband if he has any feelings for the child. Taehan just says one word and gets slapped. His wife cries and says that this is probably the bond of blood. "You win. I surrender." After saying this, she rushes to the dining room to drink. Her husband doesn't want her to force herself. Her husband says that he is a bad person and will be punished by heaven. Sian, however, said that she only wanted to take back her child from Jimin and get revenge. "I don't want to see that woman happy. I don't expect myself to be a good stepmother either." On the other side, Jimin had to return to the countryside overnight. Taehan stood far away and silently saw him off. He didn't want to burden his girlfriend and secretly vowed in his heart that he would take the mother and child back to Seoul one day. The next day, Jinky went to Jimin's house to spread rumors. As the saying goes, good news never travels fast, but bad news travels fast. The neighbors gossiped behind their backs, making the Jimin family reluctant to go out. But his father didn't care at all. He just wanted his youngest daughter and grandson to live in peace. Taehan came to see Jimin's father on purpose and wanted to buy him a drink. The old man was also very sorry that the two of them did not work out. But from a realistic point of view, He still hoped that Taehan would not waste his time. Taehan didn't want to give up. As long as he could occasionally contact Jimin, he would be very satisfied. Jimin's father said that if you guys have a connection, you will get back together again. But don't rely too much on fate. If you really can't hold on, you can give up. Every child is a lifelong concern for their parents. That day, Seon came to the countryside to find Jimin. Jimin questioned her as to why she was here. It turned out that Seon, who was unable to bear children, wanted to fight for custody through legal means. Jimin said, "What qualifications do you and your husband have to fight over the son I gave birth to with my life?" Seon told her to save those words for the court. Meanwhile, Junwoo consulted a lawyer about what to do. The lawyer advised submitting the paternity test report and filing a complaint. But generally, the mother will be awarded custody unless she is financially incapable. After hearing this, Junwoo felt confident of victory. Seon had always believed that Jimin's existence had ruined her family, so the only way for her and her husband to return to the way things were before was for the other party to disappear and they could get their child back. Jimin was furious and would never give her son to them. After the other party left, she finally couldn't hold back her tears. Unexpectedly, a colleague from the kindergarten heard the two of them talking and thought she was a woman who destroyed other people's families. Seon, as soon as she got home, her mother-in-law immediately asked her about the progress of the matter. As long as she could get her grandson back, she would rather be a slave to her daughter-in-law. Seon's mood was mixed. Although she hated that woman, she also felt that this was a bit cruel. Jimin's matter spread throughout the kindergarten. Several kindergarten teachers found the dean and reported it. Don't be deceived by her kind appearance. While talking, Jimin pushed open the door and entered. The child had a slight fever, so she had to take some time off to go out for a while. She didn't notice the strange looks from her colleagues. Jimin finished seeing the doctor and stood at the intersection waiting for a taxi. She happened to meet a parent of a student. The man insisted on giving her a ride to the kindergarten. Jimin wanted to refuse, but the man pushed her into the car. This scene was just seen by another parent. At noon, Junwoo and his wife came to the countryside again. Seon waited in the car. Her husband talked to Jimin alone about custody. Jimin said that the child had nothing to do with him. Junwoo, however, gave a disdainful smile. He did it for his family. He was afraid that the child would ruin his future. Now he's saying such shameful things? Junwoo doesn't care about the abuse at all. He just hopes that Jimin is mentally prepared. Jimin returns to the kindergarten, but several parents come over to cause trouble, saying that she has done something that offends public morals. Now they are targeting someone else. Jimin just wants to explain, but the other party grabs her hair. Junwoo sees this, but he doesn't feel the least bit guilty. Seon just wants to get away from the trouble as soon as possible. Taehan appears and hears the parents' slander. He asks what they are talking about. The kind and foolish woman finally decides to fight back. She can't just leave like this. She rushes out of the bedroom and calls the parents to the school to confront them face to face. The man proves Jimin's innocence. The parents who started the trouble apologize with their heads bowed. On the way, Seon taunts her husband. "Is this how Jimin got close to you in the first place?" Her husband doesn't respond because he knows that Jimin is not that kind of person. Jimin doesn't want to avoid anymore and returns to Seoul that day. But she was afraid to go back to her parents' house for fear that Junwoo would come and take the baby again. In order to protect her son, Jimin had to find a stable job as soon as possible. Strangely, many of the resumes she had sent were not answered. The calls she received were either for hourly work or part-time work. Mom didn't know that Jimin had already returned to Seoul. She even urged her to hurry back to prepare for the 100th day banquet for her grandson. Jimin didn't dare tell her mother about her current situation. Her parents had already worried about her to no end. The next day, Jinki came to the countryside to see her grandson. When she learned that the child and his mother had left, she caught the head of the kindergarten and demanded to know. Taehan rushed to the office to settle scores with Junwoo. No matter what method he used, he must not let Junwoo take the child away. Junwoo, however, argued plausibly, "I am the child's father." The chairman has been monitoring the movements of the four of them. He is afraid that his grandson will get involved with an unmarried mother again. But he only knows that Junwoo has disowned his own flesh and blood for the sake of his career. He is not sure what Junwoo is doing now to get the child back. The next day, the chairman met Junwoo at the elevator at the company. Junwoo politely greeted him, but it only invited the chairman's ridicule. He suppressed his anger and said something meaningful. He heard that the woman had returned, but she didn't go back to her parents' house. The chairman immediately went to the grandson's rented house. At this time, Jimin realized that it was Junwoo who had prevented her from getting a job. She couldn't stand it anymore and immediately called Junwoo and yelled at him. Jimin didn't know that the chairman was standing behind him. The chairman was very angry. "Didn't you promise to break up? Why do you have to live here? Don't you have any self-respect?" Jimin shamelessly said that she had no self-respect. "If I can break up with Taehan, what benefits can you give me?" The chairman said that as long as you break up, I can promise you anything. Unexpectedly, Jimin only wanted a stable, well-paid job. The chairman didn't know Jimin's goal, so she let her move out first. "We'll talk about work after you leave, and this matter must absolutely be kept a secret from Taehan." The chairman left angrily, scolding his grandson for being good for nothing. Then he instructed his assistant to continue following the woman. Jimin immediately packed her bags and decided to leave. Before leaving, she deliberately told the little boy not to tell his uncle about the chairman's visit. Jimin also took out some change and gave it to the child. The sensible boy refused to accept it, saying that he would ask for it again when his sister made a lot of money. Jimin, however, forced it into his hand. Thanked them for being so nice to me. That day, the child's 100th day banquet was held, but Jinky came uninvited. Jinky, alone, did not show any weakness and fought with the woman's family. While talking, Taehan walked in. Jinky immediately changed her face and introduced herself. Taehan, however, ignored her. Then he gave a gift to Jimin. Jinky chased after Taehan and ran out. Getting into the car, she hoped that Taehan would persuade Jimin to give up the child, which would be conducive to your marriage. Taehan said that he was willing to raise his son for someone else. In order to protect his son, Jimin has made a deal with the chairman. The two meet at a cafe. Jimin once again proposes to break up. Now I'm so tired of you that I'm sick of it. Jimin is willing to swear on his son's name that what he said is not a lie. Taehan's eyes are a little wet and he stammers, asking her when she started to hate herself. Jimin says, I've hated you since I found out who you are. This time, Taehan doesn't try to stop him. They say that men don't cry easily, but only when they're not sad. When she got home, Jimin looked through the gifts her boyfriend had prepared for her. Seeing the matching parent-child outfits in the photo of the three of them, she finally couldn't hold back any longer and burst into tears. Between her son and her boyfriend, she could only choose the former. Taehan, on the other hand, was drunk at the restaurant. Grandpa soon received a call, guessing that the two might have broken up. He urged his assistant to go pick them up. Taehan woke up in the early morning, recalling his girlfriend's heartless words. He was determined to let go. He packed all the items related to the two of them into a box. In order to win back custody, Junwoo cut off Jimin's path to finding a job. He thought this would give him a winning hand. Seon, however, didn't know if this was right or wrong. After the breakup, Jimin was anxious because the chairman had not yet fulfilled his promise. She called him, but the chairman's assistant said he wasn't there. No one knew what the chairman was going to do. Junwoo, on the other hand, went to Taehan's office to mock him. How can you still be in the mood to work? Didn't you say you were responsible for Jimin? Jimin dares not tell her parents about her situation. It's as if a big stone is stuck in her chest. Her mother thinks she has indigestion and keeps massaging her. Jimin can't help but recall all the good things about Taehan when she sees the scene. Seon, on the other hand, interrogates her husband's soul. Does he feel the slightest bit of remorse for that woman? Now that she thinks about it, she only gave birth to your son. Why do you have to suffer like this? Junwoo, however, replies with a lofty answer. I don't care what happens in order to protect the family. Seon is stunned. She finds her husband's words a bit frightening. The chairman admires Jimin's craftsmanship. He wants to set up a department specifically for Jimin to be in charge of online sales, in addition to a basic salary. There will be a 5% commission at the end of the year. He will also provide her with a studio. Jimin is stunned. This completely exceeds her expectations. The chairman asks her to take the contract home and think about it. As soon as Jimin enters the house, she sees Jinky holding legal documents and saying that she has the right to visit her grandson. She couldn't hold back anymore and rushed to the company to settle scores with Junwoo. Seon stopped her in the middle, saying that she would talk to her. Jimin asked the couple to withdraw the lawsuit. Junwoo came out but told Taehan about Jimin's visit to the company. He had been scheming to sabotage Taehan's relationship with his grandfather. After the breakup, Taehan hadn't seen Jimin for a long time. He returned to the office thoughtfully, and his grandfather came again, nagging endlessly. Taehan said sorry and walked out of the office. At this time, Seon was again blaming Jimin for secretly giving birth to her child. No matter if you were deceived or not, you deserve it. Jimin said that it was a life I could not kill him cruelly. Should an unmarried mother die? You are also a mother. What would you do if someone took your child away from you? A few words left Seon speechless. Jimin was waiting for the elevator, but Taehan did not have the courage to go up. He was afraid that the other person would hate him even more. Until the elevator door closed, he regretted it and chased after him. Taehan ran like crazy from the safety stairs to the bottom floor. The sad woman only remembered to press the elevator floor. Just like this, the people in love once again passed each other by. Seon kept thinking about what Jimin had said. If she got pregnant, she would not abort the baby no matter what the circumstances. Although she understood the other person's situation, in order to maintain her marriage, she had to rob the baby against her conscience. Jimin dragged her tired body home. The custody battle was going to begin the following week. Then she took out the contract with the chairman. One of the conditions was that she could never see Taehan again. For the sake of her son, she had to give up her love and fight Junwoo's family to the end. Then she went to the chairman's house and signed the contract. The chairman said to her with satisfaction, "This is the best of all possible worlds." While they were talking, the assistant suddenly walked in and announced that the young master had returned. Jimin had to hide under the desk and listen to the conversation between the grandfather and grandson in silence. The grandfather hoped that Taehan would devote all his energy to his work. Someone was eyeing his position. Taehan, who had just been dumped, turned the conversation around and asked his grandfather to arrange a blind date for him. He wanted to marry a nice girl from the same family. As Taehan left, he heard a belching sound. Jimin then went to the studio prepared for her by the chairman. Her dreams have come true, but she is not happy at all. Her mind is filled with the desolate eyes of her boyfriend. Jimin doesn't know how to adjust her emotions. She can only take out the photos of her baby with her to remind herself that she needs this job. Otherwise she will lose custody. However, the chairman, who likes to control the situation, wants to conduct an experiment, so he asks his grandson to meet him at the hotel on the weekend. The chairman does this to see for himself if they have completely broken up. That day, Jimin went to the hotel to deliver the order as usual. The two saw each other at a glance, their thoughts pressed against each other's chests. Jimin pretended not to know Taehan. Taehan held her back and wanted to talk. Jimin's heart softened and she burst into tears, and saw the chairman. In desperation, she slapped Taehan. In short, she hoped the other party would let her go, and in the future, she just wanted to be strangers. Taehan instantly lost his mind and cornered Jimin. Jimin lied and said she regretted falling in love with him. His appearance made her look even more embarrassed. Taehan slowly let go of her hand, but he just couldn't figure out why the woman he loved so much had become so cold overnight. So he chased after her like a madman. He had to catch up to Jimin. He kept his foot on the gas and passed cars left and right. Just then, his grandfather called again. At this point, the chairman still didn't know that his grandson had been in a car accident. He was a little resentful of Jimin's cold words. It wasn't long before the hospital called. They said Taehan had been in a car accident. His roommate was the first to get the news. Fortunately, after examination, the injury was not serious. However, there was a slight concussion. The doctor was unable to determine exactly when he would wake up. When Jimin returned home from work, she vaguely heard that Taehan had had an accident. She hurried over to ask about it. Her father, however, did not want her to continue to get involved with the other party. Just then, Taehan's friend's son walked in. Since his father had to stay at the hospital, he said that he would stay here for the night. He heard that Taehan had been in a car accident and had not regained consciousness yet. Jimin knows that it's all because of her father, but her eldest son-in-law has her under house arrest. Jimin breaks down and even tries to escape. Her mother sits outside nagging, saying that no matter what, she should let her daughter go and see him. Her father pretends to be impatient and leaves the living room, but turns around and stands at the window. He watches Jimin leave the house. Father is also very reluctant to let go of Taehan. Jimin pushes open the door to the hospital room, and suddenly tears fall like rain. She blames herself and stays at the hospital to take care of him attentively. Junwoo stood at the door and listened. No one knows what he was feeling. When Jimin left, Junwoo quietly returned to the ward because he had discovered an important secret and wanted to tell her in person. But then Jimin walked in and told him to get out. Immediately, Junwoo asked her to think about why she had happened to meet him at the hotel before the accident. So obviously someone had deliberately arranged it. Do you have any idea who she might be? Jimin didn't dare think too much. Fortunately, Taehan, who had been in a coma for a day and a night, woke up. He removed the needle in his hand and staggered out of the ward. Jimin saw her boyfriend from afar and hurriedly went up to him. Unexpectedly, Taehan walked past her expressionless. Taehan said to Jimin, "Who are you?" These were the exact words Jimin had said to him before the accident. Jimin mistakenly thought that the other person had lost his memory. In the blink of an eye, Taehan left the hospital, standing outside alone. He pondered the recent events. His heart was broken. He found it hard to forgive. The chairman rushed to the hospital to visit his grandson as soon as possible, and could tell that Taehan had really given up on the unwed mother this time. These days, he's so worried that he takes out his anger on Jimin, and even threatens to cancel the contract. Who told her to break the rules? I already said no more meetings. Taehan is waiting for Jimin. She blames no one. This is her own choice. Her only goal is to protect her son and not let the Junwoo family take him away. Sometimes she would also fall into self-doubt. Is it really a crime to give birth to a child out of wedlock? The next day, Jimin thought back to what Junwoo had said and suddenly realized it must have been the chairman who planned that meeting. He deliberately asked them to meet in one place to make sure that the two of them had broken up. She angrily confronted the chairman. "It was you who almost killed Taehan." The old man, who had been fighting in the business world all his life, was not afraid of Jimin's threats. No matter what she said, he insisted on breaking the contract. The kind-hearted Jimin didn't want to break the relationship between the grandfather and the grandson, so he had to bear the pain alone. The chairman, however, dumped the secret contract on his grandson. This was the woman he chose. "She resolutely gave up on you just for a job." Taehan carefully read the terms and conditions. Although he knew that Jimin was doing this for her son, he was sad and mad in his heart. At this time, Jimin was packing her things. The chairman had already withdrawn his investment and closed the studio. Jimin was about to leave when Taehan suddenly appeared. She didn't realize that she was so cheap in the eyes of the other person. "How can you protect your child like this?" Jimin, with red eyes, begged him to find a job for her. "As a mother, I can give up my pride. It is said that the deeper the love, the more painful the wound." Taehan mocked and said, "You were abandoned by the chairman. And you came to me, unless you sincerely beg me. Cry and make a scene and beg me. My sister heard the babies crying and realized that Jimin's body was burning hot. Jimin kept talking nonsense in her mouth. Fortunately, there are still family members around. Otherwise no one would know if she burns out. Jinky, however, inquires about the progress of the lawsuit every day and can't wait to take her grandson home. She even instigates her daughter-in-law to fire Jimin's brother-in-law as a way to threaten her into handing over custody. Seon, who is infertile, is becoming more and more twisted. She even thinks this is a good idea. She discusses it with her husband. Junwoo feels a little uncomfortable. After all, Jimin's brother-in-law has been working for the company for 13 years, and their priority right now is dealing with the chairman's grandson. And the lovelorn Taehan is torturing himself. He wants to force himself to completely let go of Jimin and his mother. The next day at work, the two men happened to meet at the elevator. Junwoo racked his brains to try to provoke a rift between Taehan and his grandfather, so he hinted that the meeting at the hotel was a trap set up deliberately. Your grandfather almost got you killed. Don't you know that? At this time, Jimin was tricked into an irregular company interview. She was so scared that she fled in panic and accidentally fell. Seon suddenly called to ask to meet to discuss custody. She saw the blood on Jimin's arm at a glance. She didn't understand why the other party had to choose such a difficult path. Jimin's words made the infertile Seon feel ashamed. A mother doesn't calculate the gains and losses for her child. This is instinct. Seon angrily sat there. No one could understand her feelings at that moment. That day, Taehan also asked Jimin to meet at a cafe and asked if she knew that the chairman deliberately arranged for them to meet at the hotel. And Jimin already knew about it. The chairman did it on purpose. Taehan finally understood that a kind woman doesn't want to destroy their grandfather-grandson relationship. Subsequently, Taehan went to find his grandfather and said that the past could be forgiven and he didn't want to fall into the trap of a villain. But there was one condition: the studio reopened and Jimin came back to work. The chairman was a little ashamed. Since his grandson had already decided to break up, there was no reason for him to refuse this request. At this time, Jimin secretly worked part-time at the hotel without telling her family. As long as she could make money, she was willing to do anything. Taehan saw this and felt pain in his heart, but he knew that only by becoming strong and establishing himself in the company could he protect the woman he loved. In the days that followed, the stubborn president also began to reflect on the fact that he had been a little too ruthless towards that woman, so he lowered his stance and took the initiative to call Jimin to his home. He said that she had passed his test and would continue to be in charge of the studio. That day, Jimin went to the hotel to deliver desserts. When she left, she happened to meet Seon. Seon was surprised to see her there, but she soon realized that Taehan had helped Jimin clinch the deal. Before leaving, she reminded Jimin not to forget about the custody lawsuit. The trial was set to begin the following week. Jimin never imagined that Taehan had done so much for her without saying a word. Just then, the elevator doors opened, and there was the person she had been thinking about day and night. Taehan reached out to stop the elevator. The two were both a little embarrassed after not seeing each other for so long. Taehan broke the silence and asked how she had been doing lately. Jimin thanked the other person for their help. The two walked one after the other, but they were discovered by the chairman. When he learned that the two had just met by chance, he did not lose his temper. Jimin hurriedly left. From the day she accepted this job, she was already prepared to draw a line with Jang-soo. She would do anything to get her son Junwoo back. He even fabricated testimony to slander Jimin, saying that she refused to abort the baby just to destroy her own family. Seon also had one more concern. She didn't want anyone to know that she was infertile. In fact, Jinky had already spread the news of her privacy in the third person. The kind-hearted Jimin never wanted to hold anyone to ransom. As long as her son was by her side, she was content. Thanks to her aunt's delicate mind, she suddenly remembered a story Jinky had told before. They had been married for many years, were infertile, and then adopted a daughter. Could that woman be her daughter-in-law? If it was about her friend, why was she so excited about it? Because the other person was infertile. She had to take the child away. Her aunt was determined to find out the truth. She was just not sure what good it would do them to fight for custody. Unexpectedly, Jinky came to her door that very day. Without saying a word, she used her words to trap the other woman. Why did they have only one child after being married for so long? Then she pressed Jinky about the age of her granddaughter. Sure enough, as she had expected, the 7 years of hiding matched the age of the child, so she immediately told her sister-in-law about her big discovery and analyzed the current situation. Although her analysis was well-reasoned, she couldn't speak ill of things she couldn't prove. Jimin's business was getting better and better, but Junwoo just showed up uninvited. Junwoo then said something puzzling. Then he picked up the photo on the table. Jimin saw this and quickly walked over and snatched the photo. The verdict of the first trial came out quickly, and the powerful man won. Seon was in a good mood and wanted to mock Jimin. Jimin became more and more determined and said he would appeal until the end. Jinky said something strange at home again that day. The child curiously asked her what adoption was. These words happened to be heard by her daughter-in-law. Infertility is a pain she can't bear to talk about. She can't stand anyone pointing fingers at her. The mother-in-law hastily explains. but her daughter-in-law interrupts her. The sister-in-law's family is actually suspecting. The mother-in-law had no choice but to tell Jimin's aunt about her infertility before it was too late. Sian is on the verge of collapse and asks the woman if she knows. The mother-in-law quickly reassures her and says that the other party is just speculating. This is Sian's last dignity. What kind of woman would help her husband steal a bastard child? If she touches her wound again, she won't hold back. The next day, after delivering the goods, Jimin ran into Junwoo again. Jimin scolded him for being inhumane and full of lies. He would make up any excuse to fight for custody. Sooner or later, he would be punished by heaven. Sian stopped him, emphasizing that the person who destroyed her family deserved to be punished. Who can wake up someone who is pretending to sleep? Sian was used to deceiving herself. Naeun, however, easily revealed her adopted status. She heard it from her grandmother and aunt chatting. The boy's shocked mouth opened wide. Naeun asked her mother again at night what adoption was. The little brother I know doesn't seem to know very well either. Sian's face suddenly turned pale. She lied to her daughter, saying she had heard it wrong. You are my biological child. Don't go blabbing it to everyone in the future. Then she warned her husband. If that thing becomes public knowledge, I don't know what kind of person I will become. However, Sian's infertility soon reached Jimin's aunt. When she got home, she couldn't wait to share the news with Jimin. The kind-hearted Jimin didn't gloat over the woman's misfortune, but felt a little sorry for her. Her sister, who was also infertile, was the last to know about this. She understood the feeling better than anyone else, so she specifically told her husband to be nicer to his boss in the future. If she knew her husband had a child with someone else, she would definitely go crazy. The man was also quite shocked. His wife usually looked elegant, and it was impossible to tell that she was hiding so much pain. That day, Jimin came to the company to discuss the supply issue with her brother-in-law. Her brother-in-law took the initiative to mention Sian's infertility. She probably didn't mean to delay payment. I hope you can understand. Her brother-in-law's original good intentions were heard by Sian, who happened to pass by. Sian then realized that the secret she had been desperately keeping had been cruelly revealed. She felt like a joke, and became the topic of conversation at others' dinner tables. She stormed back to the office and tried hard to adjust her emotions. Then she went to her husband's place and blamed the unmarried mother for all her grievances. Sian vowed that Jimin and her brother-in-law would disappear forever. She glared at Jimin viciously but didn't say a word. Jimin didn't know what was going on. Her former colleague told her that the other person's temperament had recently changed drastically. She couldn't help but drop her cup and scold people. To vent her anger, Sian planned to fire Jimin's brother-in-law first. The humiliation of being infertile is like a nail in her body. Jinky is the culprit. As soon as she got home, Sian announced to her mother-in-law that she was giving up the custody battle. She doesn't want to become a joke and be pointed at. It's outrageous to snatch someone else's child because she can't have any of her own. In short, if you don't want them to divorce, give up the grandson who is away. Then Sian went upstairs and told her husband of her decision. Junwoo dares not voice his opposition. He still relies on his father-in-law's connections to gain a foothold in the company, but he can't help but show a lost expression. Although he has only met his son a few times, their kinship makes him unable to let go of that child. Jinky is anxious. What can she do to change her daughter-in-law's mind? Sura advises her not to provoke her sister-in-law. She is the queen of this household. Jinky, however, cannot hold back. The next day, she rushes to the company and happens to run into Jimin. Without distinguishing right from wrong, she starts to accuse people, thinking that Jimin had deliberately hurt her feelings by taking advantage of the situation. Jimin had initially felt some sympathy for Sian, but Sian came up to her and said something harsh. We'll see what happens next. Jimin felt that it was unreasonable. Why? Because they were taking out their grudges on other people. Sian, however, was stubborn and wouldn't listen. She turned around and went to find her husband to warn him that if he dared to secretly see their child, they would get a divorce. Fortunately, Jimin's career was booming. A TV station had even asked her to do a food show. When her father heard the news, he felt relieved. It seemed that everything was developing in a positive direction. On the day of the recording, her aunt and sister came out to help. Everyone's faces were filled with smiles. However, Sian's revenge soon came. Her brother-in-law, who had worked for the company for 13 years, was fired for a minor mistake. Taehan was the first to know about it. He threatened Junwoo to cancel the personnel appointment as soon as possible. Otherwise the entire marketing department would suffer. Junwoo was a little hesitant, so he discussed with his wife whether they could first praise and delay the dismissal of section chief Kim. If the shareholders find out about this, it won't do us any good. Sian is seething with anger and resents Taehan for meddling in everything. At this time, Jimin finally learns that her brother-in-law has been fired. She can't stand it anymore and confronts Sian. Sian, however, refuses to relent. Unless time can be turned back to before she and Junwoo met, her brother-in-law comforts Jimin, saying that this is his own job failure. He also asks her to keep the secret from the family for now. Fortunately, Taehyun's pressure worked and her brother-in-law was able to keep his job. Jimin came to the hospital that day to pick up some documents. The assistant asked her to look after the sick chairman for a while. Jimin felt very bad when she saw the unconscious old man. She really hoped that her grandfather would recover soon. Jimin had just walked out to change the dressing when Junwoo arrived at the ward. The wolf-hearted guy was hoping every day that the chairman would step down and hand over power. It seemed as if the old man had woken up. His heart monitor followed with an abnormal reaction. Junwoo saw this and hurriedly left. But his figure was still discovered by Jimin, so Jimin immediately returned to the ward and hurriedly called the doctor. After a series of rescue efforts, the chairman finally escaped danger. Taehyun was worried about his grandfather's illness and learned from his assistant. If it wasn't for Miss Jimin, the chairman might have had an accident. That night, Taehyun mustered the courage to express his gratitude to Jimin. Unfortunately, he was interrupted by his friend after a few words. Junwoo took the opportunity to call a shareholders meeting and try to remove the chairman from his position on the grounds of his poor health. Taehyun, who had been in the company for less than a year, was no match for him. Junwoo then revealed a smile of success. Taehyun ultimately failed to keep his grandfather's position. At the same time as receiving the notification, the chairman suddenly woke up. He did not ask his grandson to protect the business as he had in the past. Instead, he whispered an apology in his ear. This apology, Taehyun had been waiting for 30 years, because his grandfather disapproved of his parents' marriage. His parents left him one after the other, so for all these years, he has been fighting against his grandfather. In the final days of his life, the chairman finally woke up. He tried hard to dissolve the resentment in his grandson's heart. Over and over again, he said sorry. Taehyun's tears could not stop falling. Unfortunately, God did not give this grandfather and grandson more time to be reunited. The doctor asked the family to be mentally prepared. Junwoo has also been sending spies to monitor the chairman's condition. Unfortunately, his grandfather did not pull through. In the early morning, his eyes closed forever. When he was covered with a white cloth, Taehyun almost collapsed. Jimin knew that the chairman was the only relative she had in the world. She couldn't bear to lose the old man, and she felt even more distressed for Taehyun. Junwoo hypocritically went to the funeral. Taehyun knew in her heart that although her grandfather had a serious heart condition, his condition had worsened because of this bastard. Taehyun thought she could hold back, but then she heard him on the phone again, telling her to speed up the chairman's election process. He punched Junwoo directly, knocking him to the ground. Seeing this, the others hurriedly stepped forward to stop them. Taehyun wanted to strangle the other man, but after a moment, he regained his strength and reason. Seon, however, was full of confusion. Why did Taehyun hate her husband so much? In fact, Junwoo had done many despicable things to get the company without telling her. Jimin was busy at the funeral, and deliberately brought a meal to force Taehyun to eat a little. Once upon a time, he yelled at his grandfather every day, and recalled the past, leaving behind tears of remorse. Taehyun wiped away the tears and saw his grandfather off on his last journey. The chairman left all his assets and shares to his beloved grandson. Taehyun also secretly vowed to defend the empire his grandfather had built. Junwoo hid the pictures of his illegitimate child from his wife, but his mother suddenly burst in, startling him. Junwoo hastily covered up, not wanting his mother to know that he couldn't let go of that child. Jinki, however, seemed like a detective, and the more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. So she took advantage of her son taking a bath to sneak into the bedroom and find the child's photo. Jinki ran out and just happened to bump into her daughter-in-law. She quickly made an excuse and then went to the living room to calm her emotions. She felt bad for Junwoo, who had been suppressing his longing for his biological child. Jinki also specifically told her younger daughter to keep the secret. This matter must not be told to your sister-in-law. She decided to take a step back and give up raising her grandson, but she must fight for visitation rights for herself. Seon nodded in agreement, but she would not allow her husband to see the child in private. Jinki was so excited that she almost let slip. Seon had always heard people talking about her marriage. Jimin finally received a call from the lawyer, and learned that the man had withdrawn the lawsuit. Jimin wept with joy. She no longer had to be afraid of her son being taken away. She can't wait to share the good news with her family. She was prepared to fight the lawsuit for a few years. Her parents are especially happy. They have seen their daughter's hard work. Meanwhile, Seon's father has returned to the country and wants to help his son-in-law become the chairman. Soon, he hears some bad rumors, so he immediately calls his daughter home to confront her. To this day, Seon still fiercely defends her husband and even turns things upside down. She says that woman knew Junwoo's identity and deliberately approached him. In order to rise to power, she was willing to have a child. His father could not tolerate this and yelled at him to call his son-in-law over. Seon cried and begged for her husband, asking her father to let it go for her sake. Jinki, who was selfish once, had a fantasy in her heart and hoped that Seon's father would accept her grandson. When she learned that the prosecution had been withdrawn, she was so angry that she cursed. Why are you in such a hurry? What if there is still a chance? In fact, Seon's father hated the two of them getting divorced, but he could not argue with his daughter. Having lost his mother at a young age, he knew how much she longed for a happy family. The next day, Her father-in-law met with Junwoo with suppressed anger and warned him that if he ever made his daughter shed another tear, he would personally kick him out of the company. The grandson of the chairman, who held a lot of shares, was still his biggest competitor. Taehan stood in front of his grandfather's portrait and vowed to protect the group. As he was leaving, he saw Jimin's car, so he returned. At this time, Jimin was praising Taehan in front of the chairman for being such a good man. Seon saw Jimin on TV that day, and her smile instantly disappeared. She hated this woman and didn't want to see her looking so successful. Then she went upstairs and asked her husband what he planned to do. To appease his wife, Junwoo planned to terminate the cooperation with Jimin. The next day, his father-in-law came to the office. He heard some rumors again and wanted to see the woman in person. Junwoo was extremely guilty and lied that neither the child nor the mother were in the country. He respectfully saw off his father-in-law. Unexpectedly, the two men met in the elevator. Jimin did not know the identity of the other party and even gave out samples for the guests to taste. However, the couple's company removed the other party's display cabinet without saying goodbye. Jimin could only carry the things and leave seeing the person in charge. He could not help but ask questions. Seon, however, did not relent and mocked her, causing her to lose face. Jimin became more and more determined. With a good reputation, she soon negotiated a deal with other major hotels. Taehan, on the other hand, was busy collecting evidence of Junwoo's embezzlement. The company says that the only thing to fear is a weak teammate. Jinki has been granted visitation rights once a month, so she brings her grandson to the kindergarten to foster a closer relationship between the two siblings. Unexpectedly, she runs into Seon's father in the parking lot. Jinki is so scared that she quickly slams the car door. The little girl, however, insists on letting her grandfather see her brother. It's obvious that her son-in-law lied, but he doesn't show it in front of Jinki. Instead, he asks his granddaughter nonchalantly if she knows who her brother's mother is. Naeun answered without hesitation that her aunt made really delicious candy cakes. The father-in-law could hardly hide his disappointment in Junwoo. After finishing dinner, he went straight to his office. Before he could say a word, Taehan suddenly walked in. Jimin then realized that the other person was Seon's father. In order to avoid embarrassing Jimin, Taehan decided to talk to the major shareholder about personal matters on her behalf. He bluntly said that his son-in-law had told lies. Seon's father didn't know who to believe. He took a gulp of water to calm down. Then Taehan called Jimin out for some barbecue. It was the first time the two had sat down to eat together since Grandpa's death. Seeing the soybean paste at the corner of Jimin's mouth, he couldn't help reaching out to wipe it away. Now there was no longer any obstacle between the two. Family and friends all hoped that they could reconcile. When friends heard that the two had eaten barbecue together, they immediately jumped up and asked questions. That day, Naeun couldn't help but ask her mother if she missed her younger brother. Her father missed him especially. To know that her husband has a son's photo, Seon's face instantly changes. She first makes an excuse for Naeun to go back to her room, and then reaches out to her husband for his wallet. Because they have reached an agreement, her husband will never see that child again. Seon then rushes to the office, only to find a photo of the three of them. Junwoo was glad that he moved the photos in advance, otherwise there would be chaos again. After his father-in-law returned to the country, Junwoo became even more cautious. Junwoo also clearly senses his father-in-law's distrust of him. Seon, however, fiercely defends her husband and remains oblivious to her father's warnings. She believes that no matter how greedy Junwoo is, he would never do anything to harm the interests of the group. Taehan, on the other hand, is trying his best to defend the company that his grandfather has built with so much effort and has secretly collected a lot of evidence of wrongdoing. Junwoo is afraid that the truth will come out and he has settled on a scapegoat in advance, promising to let his family enjoy the glory and wealth. Upon receiving the report, the prosecutor's office arrived at the company immediately. Seon is shocked, not knowing who these people are after. Meanwhile, her father-in-law is negotiating with Taehan. Taehan hopes that the majority shareholder will consider the company's position. Seon, however, secretly accuses Taehan of being emotional and damaging the group's reputation in order to bring down her husband. She blames the woman for everything. After interrogation, the subordinates admit to all the crimes. Junwoo thinks he can get away with it and return to the company. However, he was pointed at by his colleagues, and bad rumors were flying all over the place. His father-in-law also suggested that he take some time off until he was completely cleared of suspicion. Junwoo was full of anger and had nowhere to vent it. When he learned that Junwoo had been suspended, his mother was anxious and hurried to intercede with her daughter-in-law. Junwoo gnashed his teeth with hatred he had endured for many years. He just wanted to take over the group for himself. He was not willing to die and be kicked out like this. Finally, he has achieved a temporary victory. Taehan is in a great mood and goes to the studio where the unmarried mother works, where the two of them sit by the roadside drinking. Jimin sometimes doesn't understand why the other person likes children so much. After all, that bastard is the child's biological father. Taehan's words are touching. For him, a child is the woman he loves, and he loves the child. It's just a natural reaction. No need for any psychological construction. Junwoo returns to the company to hand over his work and his father-in-law surprisingly takes the initiative to ask his ex-girlfriend. Junwoo is filled with anxiety, fearing that the lie will be exposed. Taehan comes to Jimin's house for lunch. Jimin's mother is overjoyed, feeling that the two have finally overcome their obstacles and reconciled. The baby has grown so much in just a few days. It looks exactly like Jimin when he sleeps. The young couple cherish every moment together. Junwoo, on the other hand, is depressed. He was already upset about being suspended, and his wife has also begun to question him, suspecting that he has done something to harm the company. Junwoo insists that he didn't find a scapegoat and accuses his wife of not trusting him. In the morning, Jimin takes the baby to the doctor for a checkup. Unexpectedly, the 5-month-old baby is diagnosed with a problem in the bile duct. He must be admitted to the hospital immediately for surgery. If it doesn't work, a liver transplant will be required. Today happens to be Jinki's visiting day with her grandson. Jimin's mother doesn't have time to explain to her and hastily takes a taxi to the hospital. Jinki is furious and feels that the wife's family is deliberately being difficult and not letting her see her grandson. Her sister and brother-in-law also rushed to the hospital as soon as possible. They love their baby dearly and decided to take turns helping to look after the baby at the hospital. Jimin wished she could fall ill instead of her son. She had fallen down such a long flight of stairs and had not been hurt. She believed that her baby could definitely overcome the illness. She just felt sad that her baby had to undergo surgery at such a young age. The sensitive Ginki immediately sensed something was wrong. She had waited for so long but did not see the baby's mother leave the house, so she followed her all the way to the children's hospital. After bumping into Jimin, Jinki knew she had been deceived. Jinki quickly found out the room number and could no longer hide the truth. Jinki blamed the mother for not taking good care of her grandson and said that if her son hadn't forced her to have an abortion, the baby would not have been premature. How can you still have the nerve to find fault with the baby after it has gone through so much? Jinki was speechless. Jimin went to the bank to apply for a loan when she received a call from Seon's father. He promised that it would not take long and wanted to confirm something in person. Jimin hates Junwoo even more when her child gets sick. She no longer cares about Seon's feelings and confesses that she was deceived into marriage by Junwoo. They have been living on Jeju Island for a year. Junwoo told me to get rid of the baby for his career. Junwoo originally promised that the baby had nothing to do with him. Seon's father is shocked. The liar has tricked them and their daughter. As soon as she got home, Jinki told Junwoo about the grandson's condition. Perhaps it was his conscience that made Junwoo want to pay for his son's surgery. Jimin hoped that he would remember the promise they had made. This child has nothing to do with him. He said this and left decisively. Seon finally saw the true face of her husband. Her eyes instantly became moist. She gripped the steering wheel tightly. She was full of resentment and had nowhere to vent it. Junwoo recognized his wife's car at a glance. He walked up hesitantly. The two had promised that no matter what, they would never see the child's mother alone again. Otherwise, they would divorce. Junwoo desperately explains that his son has a very serious illness and may need a transplant. Seon is just sad. She thought her husband would really be able to sever the blood relationship for her. Even if he is worried, he should discuss it with her before meeting the mother of his child. Now Junwoo really wants to save his son and begs his wife to forgive him this time. Seon has no confidence anymore. Just as her mother-in-law said, the father-son relationship can never be broken. Jimin in the hospital grabs his baby's hand and prays that he will overcome the illness. No matter how difficult the journey has been, she has never regretted giving birth to her son. The little life of the baby touches everyone's heart. Jinki can't eat because she misses her grandson and encourages her son to cheer up no matter what the difficulties are. They will pass sooner or later. After his mother left, Junwoo's lower abdomen started to hurt again. He doesn't know what's wrong lately. He has to apologize over and over again when his wife comes back. Jimin's family sits down to discuss raising the surgery fee, but his father is adamant that he will not ask Jimin's boyfriend for help. It's already a high-profile marriage, and he can't burden the guy at this time. He can't even ask the father-in-law for help. He absolutely doesn't want to be involved with a liar. The upright father decides to withdraw his pension early. His sister also plans to take out 20 million won from her fixed deposit to help her younger sister get through this difficult time. The family's concerted efforts are touching. After much thought, Seon calls Jimin's phone number. There's something she wants to discuss face to face. This is a question that's been weighing on her mind for a long time. Was it really an accidental drunkenness? Jimin didn't need to defend the liar and didn't want to bear the stigma of being a bad woman. She confessed that she had a wedding in the countryside and lived on Jeju Island for a year. She later understood why the other party was reluctant to get a marriage certificate. Seon, who had been self-deceiving, silently clenched her hands. She didn't know how she got out of the hospital. Jinki looked at the emaciated Jimin and said from the bottom of her heart, "You've worked hard." Jimin hoped that the other person would not come again. They felt a burden on their mother and son. At this time, Seon sat alone in the car. Recalling her husband's lies, she was determined to divorce him. Her husband desperately tried to stop her, saying that he could not live without her. Seon felt ironic and hated to spit out her saliva to drown the scum. Junwoo tightly grasped the divorce agreement, thinking about how to win back his wife's heart. Seon, who had left, happened to bump into her mother-in-law, but she didn't say a word in response to the inquiry and just walked away. Jinki was so angry that she cursed and mocked her, finally exposing her true nature. She blatantly ignored her own family. Then she went upstairs to find her son to complain. She thought that Junwoo's career was not doing well and that's why his wife looked down on them. As they chatted, they talked about their grandson again, whether it was money or effort. They must save their own bloodline. Junwoo was so confused that he didn't give any response. Jimin has already had a tissue test and hopes to match with his son for a transplant. The only thing they can do now is wait. At noon, his mother brought a bowl of tonic for Junwoo to drink. Unexpectedly, Junwoo rushed to the bathroom and vomited furiously. His body was already feeling unwell, and his wife was pressuring him to sign the divorce agreement as soon as possible. Sian just wants to keep the adopted daughter for herself and not give a penny of the house savings. She just wants to escape from the suffocating home as soon as possible. The fact that she and her husband sleep in separate beds quickly reached the ears of her mother-in-law, so Jinky blocked the door and scolded her daughter-in-law, who was getting more and more outrageous. Sian could not stand it anymore and firmly stated that she wanted to divorce Junwoo. Mother-in-law instantly lost her momentum, but the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Even if they get divorced, it should be initiated by her son. After 8 years of marriage, they haven't even had a child. What makes her think they can break up? Junwoo, who was not feeling well, had to go to his father-in-law to beg for mercy. His father-in-law's position was clear. He unconditionally supported his daughter's choice. If he hadn't been heartbroken, how could he have been so ruthless? And believes that there is no point in maintaining such a marriage. After a few words, he tells him to leave. There will be guests at home for a while. Unexpectedly, the guest the father-in-law mentioned was actually the competitor who personally brought him down. With the support of the majority shareholder, Sian writes that Taehan will defend the group founded by his grandfather. Junwoo leaves angrily. At this time, Jimin waits for the results of the tissue test. Unfortunately, the mother and son did not match successfully. Junwoo is not feeling well again and rushes to the bathroom to vomit. Sian can't help but stand in the doorway and eavesdrop. Just then, the phone on the table rang. Looking at the caller ID of the child's mother, she held back her anger and picked up the phone. Turning around, she asked her husband if he wanted to answer Jimin's phone. Then she slammed the phone in the other person's hand. Sian knew in her heart that her husband could not let go of that child. Jimin asked Junwoo to come to the hospital for a tissue examination. Junwoo said he wanted to discuss it with his wife. Sian was disheartened and stopped talking, trying to make herself understood. If I say no, what difference will it make? Don't make me a bad woman. The mother-in-law rushes over upon hearing the news and finally learns the reason for the divorce. Jimin returns to the hospital room in a daze. The father-in-law says he needs to discuss it with his wife before deciding whether to undergo a tissue match. The mother is furious when she hears this. Jimin finally receives a phone call when he is at his lowest ebb. Junwoo then goes to the hospital to make an appointment for a tissue match the following afternoon. In the face of her son's life, all resentment is worthless. Seeing Junwoo's haggard face, Jimin can't help but worry. After all, he needs to be in good condition for the surgery. Jinky finally straightens her back. She believes that only Junwoo can save her precious grandson. She even feels that she is now qualified to take care of the baby. Jimin's mother really hopes that, as she said, the father and son will be a successful match. As Junwoo leaves, his lower abdomen begins to ache again. After much thought, he decides to get a physical examination before leaving. The preliminary diagnosis suspected that there was something wrong with his liver or gallbladder, so Junwoo underwent a series of tests. The specific results will not be available until tomorrow. The doctor also said that if there is a problem, the transplant must not be performed. After hearing this, Junwoo was afraid that he would not be able to save his son. Taehan came to the hospital to visit and wanted to share his girlfriend's pressure. He volunteered to bear the medical expenses. Although Jimin is grateful, she insists on applying for a loan. This is also what Taehan admires about her. No matter how difficult it is, she never complains about it for the sake of her child. Her sister and brother-in-law came to take turns. As an onlooker, I sincerely hope that the two of them can work things out. Taehan dragged Jimin to a restaurant and forced her girlfriend to eat a little bit like an old mother. Jimin silently prayed in her heart that Junwoo and the baby would be fine. The father applied for 50 million won in retirement benefits in advance. After hearing that his eldest son-in-law took 20 million won, he asked his wife to keep it for now. Don't use the young couple's money unless you have no other choice. Think of another way. For the elderly, the safety of their children is more important than anything else. On the other side, Jinky is afraid that her daughter-in-law will really get a divorce. She can only persuade her granddaughter to help mediate. Naeun is very obedient and conveys what her grandmother wants. Junwoo tells his wife that he needs to have an organ examination tomorrow. Sian doesn't want to hear a word. Jinky knows that her daughter-in-law will be soft-hearted and even has other ideas. If Junwoo saves his grandson, can he take him back and raise him? Sura is speechless and begs her mother not to play the devil anymore. The next day, Junwoo arrives at the hospital on time for his checkup. He is told that he has gallbladder cancer. This news is like a bolt from the blue. He came from a poor background and has always wanted to get ahead in life. In the end, he is sentenced to death by the diagnosis. With red eyes, He asks the doctor how long he has to live. Then he shakily walks out of the hospital. Jimin receives a call and rushes to the parking lot. She didn't expect Junwoo to change his mind. Jimin is anxious. The baby's condition is very poor and has been transferred to the intensive care unit. She angrily scolds Junwoo for pretending not to care, saying that he is just like this. Jimin runs after the car for a long time. No one knows Jun was suffering. Junwoo endures the pain and presses the accelerator hard. When passing through the intersection, there is a near miss. Facing the scolding, he leaned over the steering wheel and sobbed. Junwoo had never been so desperate. Jimin asked Seon out and tearfully begged her to let Junwoo get checked out. Seon, who was determined to get a divorce, was confused. She thought it was a problem between the two of them and that she had no right to interfere. Jimin was on the verge of a breakdown. Apart from her child's father, she couldn't think of anyone else who could save her son. She knelt directly on the ground. This scene happened to be seen by Taehan, so Taehan went up to help his girlfriend up. Seon was in a mixed mood and couldn't understand why her husband had suddenly changed his mind. Junwoo hid in a hotel alone, drowning his sorrows in alcohol. He was suffering from physical and mental torture. On the way, Jimin explained the situation to her mother in tears. Ginki in the hospital soon learned about it. Her grandson's life was in danger, so how could her son fail her at a critical moment? She returned home in a rage, wanting an explanation. She looked everywhere but couldn't find her son. Jinky thought her daughter-in-law was behind it all. Junwoo was afraid of getting a divorce, so he suddenly changed his mind. Seon was very upset and explained, "No matter how heartless I am, I will never stop Junwoo from saving his child." Jinky had finally been able to do something for her grandson, but now it had all gone wrong. She called her son, but there was no answer. It was late at night, and Junwoo still hadn't returned. Seon became more and more confused. Taehan on the other side couldn't help but recall the scene from earlier in the day. His girlfriend's tearful face kept lingering in his mind. After much thought, he went to the hospital to take the anonymous matching test. Afterwards, he specifically instructed his assistant to keep this a secret. As expected, someone who truly loves you is always afraid of not being enough for you. With that, Taehan underwent the liver tissue test without telling Jimin. Seon felt her husband was acting strangely and curiously asked why he hadn't returned home all night. Junwoo, however, mumbled that he had gone for a drive. Seon, half believing, took advantage of her husband's sleep to sneak into the car and look for clues. Soon she found a receipt for damage to the hotel. The next day, she went to the front desk early to verify. This is how she learned that her husband had checked into this hotel alone the night he stayed out. For some reason, he threw a bottle of wine into the room, so he paid some compensation. Seon became more and more confused as to why her husband would do this. The child's grandfather came uninvited and asked Junwoo to do a compatibility test. That's his flesh and blood. He can't just let him die. Jimin's father even knelt down and begged Junwoo to leave mercilessly. The old father was extremely desperate. His 5-month-old grandson was waiting for an operation. The mother and daughter hid in the room and listened. Jinky couldn't bear to watch anymore. She really wanted to beat her son up. Junwoo was plagued by his conscience. He also wanted to save his son, but he was sentenced to death by the hospital. Hearing his mother's voice, he quickly locked the bathroom door. He didn't want anyone to know that he had a terminal illness and was being punished by heaven. Back at the hospital, the old man did not tell his family what had happened that day. He only told his younger daughter to register as soon as possible to find a suitable donor. No matter how difficult it is, he absolutely must not give up. His grandson is lucky and will definitely overcome the disease. His father's words gave Jimin great comfort. If it weren't for the support of her family, she might have already collapsed. Life is entering the countdown. Junwoo wants to make up for his debt to his adopted daughter. Nayeon is overjoyed that she can finally go to the aquarium with her father. Jinky is speechless when she hears this. Her own flesh and blood is in danger, yet she is still in the mood to go out and have fun. As she complains, she receives a call from Jimin. Jimin still clings to a glimmer of hope, hoping that Junwoo can change his mind. She rushes to the aquarium in a panic, only to run into the other party. She is in excruciating pain. Junwoo rushes to the bathroom and vomits. After a while, he comes out. The cleaning lady caught up to him and handed him the painkillers he had left behind. Jimin saw it all. Now she had only one request: save your poor son. This may be your last chance to atone for your sins with your child. Junwoo was suffering inside, but pretended to be heartless. He took his daughter and walked away. Jinky was worried about her grandson and began to reflect on herself. She had only let her son climb high, but neglected to cultivate his character. She realized she had said the wrong thing and hurriedly hung up the phone. Jinky is so disappointed that she doesn't want to say a word to her son. Her sister and mother consider that Jimin is too tired and insist that she sleep at home for one night and think of nothing. Jimin must pull herself together for the sake of her child. When she is alone, she can't help but blame herself. She is also curious about what Junwoo is taking. Could it be that the other party has some kind of hardship? The next day, just as she is about to leave, Jimin receives a phone call from the hospital. Hearing that there is a donor, she can't believe her ears. That day, Junwoo suddenly told his wife that he agreed to divorce. Seon, Junwoo's wife, saw her husband's strange behavior and knew what was going on. He had gone to such lengths to save the illegitimate child, but now he had gone back on his word. Fortunately, the child had received a matching liver. Jimin could hardly contain her excitement. She really wanted to meet the kind donor. The news quickly reached Ginky. His grandson would finally be saved. Junwoo stood behind him, listening. He let out a long sigh of relief. Jinky was furious when he saw him. He didn't even save his own son. What a scoundrel! And said that he would definitely find the donor and repay the favor. Junwoo handed over a passbook instead. Jinky said he didn't need it, but opened it to take a look and was shocked. Why would his son give him hundreds of billions of won when he was fine? Junwoo was happy that his son was saved. Otherwise, he would really die without closure. Jimin's brother-in-law was the first to receive the notification and danced with excitement. Sian also sent her heartfelt blessings. The kind-hearted woman also didn't want anything to happen to that child. Then her brother-in-law rushed to the office to share the joy with Taehyun. But Taehyun was unusually calm. No one knew that he was the anonymous donor, who had silently sacrificed for his girlfriend without expecting anything in return. After examination, the doctor confirmed that the surgery could be scheduled next week. Thankfully, the donor's liver was very healthy, which greatly reduced the risk of the surgery. The mother and daughter wept with joy, feeling that the child was really blessed to have met such a good person. Junwoo, who had been diagnosed with cancer, planned to leave home and wait for death alone. There is so much that he owes me, and there is no way to repay him. This is his retribution. Sian also plans to move away with her adopted daughter. But then she accidentally sees a photo of her husband taken at the aquarium. The originally clear picture becomes increasingly blurry. Naeun says without thinking, "Father has a very painful stomach and he wants to throw up all the time." These words alert Sian. She has also seen her husband in pain more than once. Just then, Junwoo runs to the bathroom again due to pain. He accidentally knocks over the painkillers. A moment later, he came out with a towel, pretending to wash up inside. Sian, who still loved her husband, kindly reminded him to go to the hospital for a checkup. Junwoo insisted that he was fine, and his wife was the last person he wanted to burden. Divorce might be the last thing he could do for each other. Junwoo got up early and started packing. He lied to his mother that he was going out for a while to relax. His wife, on the other hand, repeatedly recalled recent events and suddenly remembered her father's reminder. A transplant requires good health, so she immediately called the familiar specialist to ask about the situation of her body gradually wasting away and vomiting frequently. Sian, after hearing this, hurriedly returned home and saw the signed divorce agreement at a glance. She was in a state of confusion and rummaged through everything to find the reason for her husband's abnormal behavior. She rummaged from the desk to the bathroom, but unfortunately found nothing. Fear filled her heart. She called her husband's phone, but he didn't answer. Sian had to ask her mother-in-law if she knew where Junwoo had gone for a stroll. Jinky still resents Junwoo for not saving her precious grandson. Sian had no choice but to confess that her husband had gone after finishing the divorce papers. He had insisted on not letting go some time ago. This sudden change was really puzzling. When the mother-in-law heard this, she became even angrier. Why would they torture each other if they love each other? Sian felt that she was being wishful thinking and voiced her suspicions. She felt that there was something wrong with her husband's body. Now she must find her husband and take him to the hospital for a checkup. Jimin, however, was in a great mood. She had finally found a donor for her son. She doesn't know who paid the huge surgery fee. She suspects it was her boyfriend, Taehyun, who denies it repeatedly. One can't help but speculate that the father of the child has a conscience, and subsequently found the majority shareholder and confessed that he wants to donate his liver to save his girlfriend's son, but will claim to be going on a business trip abroad. He hopes that he can help him keep it a secret. Sian's father is moved by his sense of responsibility and is more at ease with such a successor managing the company. Before the surgery, Taehyun decides to visit his late grandfather. He didn't expect Junwoo, who had been at odds with his grandfather during his lifetime, to stand there confessing. Junwoo looked at each other and wanted to leave. Taehyun questioned him if he wanted to atone for his sins. Taehyun happened to witness the other person's unbearable pain. He kindly approached to ask, but the other person pushed him away. Taehyun, who was observant, discovered that Junwoo was taking painkillers. Junwoo tried his best to hide his illness and wanted to escape to a place where no one was and wait for death alone. Just as they said, sooner or later, they would be punished by heaven. Taehyun saw the panic in his eyes. He even nearly ran into a child. Meanwhile, Sian finally found the white pill that had been left on the ground. She immediately picked it up and went to the pharmacy to ask what medicine it was. The pharmacist asked her solemnly who was going to take it. When she heard the other person's reply, Sian's eyes instantly reddened. Even now, she still can't believe it. Tears just keep flowing down her face. Sian is torn between love and hatred for her husband. She is even more afraid that her husband will leave forever. Then she cried and called her father, saying that Junwoo seemed to have an incurable disease. She didn't know what to do. Her father found out that Junwoo had gallbladder cancer. What was strange was that Junwoo refused to have surgery. Sian's voice choked up. She had been suffering for many days and could no longer bear it. She then went to the hospital to inquire about the specific condition and treatment. The doctor's words made her even more desperate. If she did not receive treatment, she could live for up to 6 months. Sian staggered out. All her resentment disappeared. Now she just wanted the other person to live well. Tears unknowingly blurred her eyes. Meanwhile, Junwoo is fishing at the beach. He knows he has sinned deeply, and he just wants to quietly wait for death without burdening anyone. Hearing his wife's anxious message, he can't help feeling miserable. It wasn't until he heard his mother's voice that Junwoo learned that his son's surgery had been postponed due to the donor's personal problems, so he called the hospital to inquire about the situation. His son's health is his last wish. Jimin is also a little worried and afraid that the donor may change his mind at the last minute. The doctor, however, reassures her that that will never happen. That night, Tae-hun, dressed in his hospital gown, called and lied that he had to go abroad on business for a month and would be back later. He said he was sorry that he couldn't be there for the baby's surgery. Jimin believed him. She never dreamed that Tae-hun was the anonymous donor, because the child accidentally injured his ribs that day. The surgery had to be postponed for 2 weeks. The next day, the assistant came to the hospital to explain the work, but she was blocked by Jimin. So Tae-hun lifted the wound to show her it wasn't a big deal. So he didn't say anything. He sat his girlfriend down and lied, and they managed to get away with it. Tae-hun also volunteered that the baby's father seemed to have a very serious illness. Junwoo, who was staying at a small hotel, was very worried about his family. He had run out of painkillers. Sian touched her husband's desk and burst into tears. Her heart had never hurt so much. Although she hated cheating and being cheated on, she could not withdraw her love for her husband, until her adopted daughter came over and complained about sleeping with her mother. Nayeon asked her mother if she had a fight with her father. Yesterday, her aunt told her that they wanted a divorce. Sian's nose became a little bit sore, and she almost shed tears again. In the morning, Junwoo sat outside to eat. The proprietress talked about her past with her husband. She complained that her husband had been ignorant and had made a lot of mistakes when he was young. It was only in recent years that he had truly repented. When she got emotional, the proprietress's voice became a little choked. Junwoo, however, lowered his head for fear that tears would fall. He hated himself for not even having the time to atone for his sins. That day, he decided to go back to Seoul to buy more painkillers. Meanwhile, Sian's father found out his son-in-law's location through the credit card records. Sian took a picture of her husband and finally found the small hotel where he was staying. She opened the door and walked in. Looking at the simple surroundings and the few belongings, Sian felt desperate. Then she finally received a phone call. She learned that her husband had made an appointment for a follow-up consultation at 9 o'clock that day. Sian was afraid of missing it again, so she contacted her father. She was so anxious that she decided to return to Seoul immediately. Junwoo came to the hospital not for treatment, but to get some painkillers. After paying the fee, he went to the toilet. His father-in-law came to the hospital and, after confirming that Junwoo's name was there, waited with peace of mind. Junwoo found out and hid behind the wall, afraid to come out. He really had no face to burden his wife. It wasn't until the nurse called his name that he realized something was wrong. After struggling for a while, Junwoo ran out of the hospital without even getting his medicine. He passed by his wife, who had arrived in a hurry. Sian is on the verge of collapse when she learns that her husband did not go to the doctor's appointment on time. The phone still does not answer. Jimin's parents heard some rumors and told their daughter the whole story. Jimin suddenly understands. No wonder Junwoo would refuse to donate for his son. On the way, Junwoo's illness flares up again. The pain is so uncontrollable that he quickly parks the car on the side of the road. Sian runs out of the hospital and searches everywhere for her husband. Junwoo loses consciousness from the pain and is taken to the hospital. Sian rushed to the emergency room in a panic. In the end, she found her husband. Then she and the attending physician promised to convince the patient to accept treatment. I don't know how long it took, but Junwoo finally woke up. But he insisted on his opinion, thinking that death was the best relief. He felt that he owed too many people and was not qualified to continue living. Sian pleaded with a near-crying voice. How can you be so selfish? What about the people around you? Junwoo held back his tears, afraid that if he gave in for even a second, he would soften and give in. At that moment, his father-in-law came over. Life is in chaos because he broke his wedding vows and reminded the other person to keep their promise. This is a responsibility and an order. Junwoo finally agreed to the operation by changing into a hospital gown. Sian returned home and notified his mother-in-law. Jinki thought her son was just unwell. She never expected it to be cancer. She blamed herself for not wanting to wait at home for even a second and immediately decided to go to the hospital. Jinki had promised her daughter-in-law not to get excited, but when she saw her son, she couldn't control herself. Junwoo quickly looked away, afraid to look his mother in the eye. His heart was filled with worry for his son, and he hoped that his son could be saved. His mother was so distressed that she wept bitter tears. She didn't stop until her daughter-in-law walked in. At that moment, Nayeon called. wanting to hear her father's voice. Junwoo could no longer control his emotions. He made up an excuse that he needed to rest, and tried to get rid of the two of them. The operation was scheduled for the next day, but Junwoo insisted that his mother not come. Jinki could not disobey her son, so she had to compromise. But his wife is worried because her husband's cancer has spread very quickly after the examination. Seon walks out of the consultation room in a daze and meets her mother-in-law, but she dares not tell her the truth. Now she has only one hope. She must save her husband by hook or by crook. Jinki goes to see her grandson, who is also waiting for surgery. She confesses that Junwoo has cancer and that is why he cannot donate his own flesh and blood. At first, everyone scolded him as a scum of the earth, including herself, not knowing anything. She had said so many cruel things to her sick son. The child's grandmother felt a little bad about it too. Jimin never expected that the child's father would get cancer. At the beginning, she even scolded the other person and said that he would be punished by heaven. The kind-hearted woman really wanted to take back those evil words. Only Junwoo felt that he deserved it. He even lost the courage to live. Early the next morning, he was rushed into the operating room. Nari paced back and forth anxiously, asking her sister-in-law how long she planned to hide it from their mother. Jinki at home was on pins and needles, desperate to rush to the hospital, but afraid that her son would be upset. Facing life and death, Seon had long since let go of her resentment towards her husband. She could only bow her head and pray. The long operation ended in less than 2 hours, ahead of schedule. As the doctor had predicted, the situation was no longer operable. The poor woman had loved her husband with all her heart. Now her mind was in a complete mess. She instructed Nari to follow her brother's wishes and not tell their mother-in-law for the time being. Jinki rushed to the hospital at the first opportunity, thinking that the cancer had been completely removed. She cried and asked her son if he still hurt. It was all her fault. Junwoo told his mother not to cry. His mother said, "I'm happy to see you like this." Junwoo turned his head, afraid that tears would fall. He knew that his condition had reached a point where surgery was no longer possible. Seon held back her tears and persuaded the mother-in-law to go home first. Junwoo now needed to rest in peace. Jinki, however, kept saying over and over again that it was a blessing that Junwoo had survived. Junwoo's heart was cut open, unable to face the faces of his family. Everyone except Ginki knew Junwoo's true condition. Jimin and his family were feeling a mixture of emotions no matter what. After all, he is the father of their child. After his mother left, Junwoo endured the pain and took a bite of his meal. Seeing her husband in pain, Seon didn't know what to do. Jinki thought that her son's surgery had gone well and that he would recover completely in no time, so she told her granddaughter about her son's illness. Naeun was hoping that her father would return soon, and her aunt was about to burst into tears. Her brother had told her to keep the secret from her mother and child. Seon ignored her husband's cold words and stayed by his side 24 hours a day to take care of him. Junwoo asked her if she had seen the divorce agreement he had signed, but when he saw that his wife was unmoved, he started saying mean things again. Junwoo was filled with mixed emotions. Jimin cheered herself up every day. Although she didn't know why the donor suddenly postponed the surgery, she was willing to believe that kind and good people would keep their promises. She pushed the baby out for some fresh air and happened to run into her boyfriend, who had injured his ribs. Taehan truly regarded the baby as his own. He insisted on eating Jimin's ice cream because he was sick. Who would have thought that her boyfriend was the anonymous donor? After waiting for about a week, the doctor came to inform them that the surgery was scheduled for the day after tomorrow. Jimin's heart finally settled. Fortunately, the donor did not change his mind, and she shared the good news with her boyfriend. Taehan first. He lied and said that he would fly to the United States for business as soon as he was discharged from the hospital the next day. He regretted that he could not be with them. Then he took his girlfriend's hand and believed that the baby would definitely overcome the difficulties. His friends felt a little strange. He was going to the United States just when Jimin needed him. Taehan wanted to say something but thought twice and kept everything to himself. Heard that the grandson will have surgery tomorrow. Jinki rushed over to visit. Jinki hopes that both father and son will be discharged from the hospital healthy. When he learned that his son was finally going to have surgery, Junwoo's nose got a little sour, and tears swirled in his eyes. These days, he has been worried sick that the donor might change his mind. At this time, Seon was discussing treatment options with her father. She could clearly feel that her husband had no will to live. As they talked about the company. His father helped Taehan hide the fact that he was going to the United States on business today. These words happened to be heard by Junwoo and made him suspicious. He couldn't believe that the man who hated him so much would save his son. Taehan cheered himself up and saved his girlfriend's baby. He safely walked off the operating table. Jimin also almost didn't sleep all night, watching over the baby. Taehan was rushed into the operating room ahead of schedule. A conservative estimate is at least 12 hours. This may be the highest state of love. No return, no price. He was only accompanied by his assistant. Taehan prayed in his heart, hoping that his parents in heaven and his grandfather would wish him success in the operation. The waiting time was especially torturous. Jimin persuaded his sister to let his father go home first. Jinki arrived later and, looking at Jimin's haggard face, said, "You've worked hard." At this time, Junwoo in the ward was also feeling uneasy. He couldn't help but ask his wife, "Are you sure Taehan went on a business trip abroad?" Sean also heard from her father that a branch was to be built in Los Angeles. Junwoo was doubtful. Logically speaking, the president who had just taken office would not expand his business so easily. Jimin's mother pitied her and didn't know that Junwoo had terminal cancer. After breakfast, a friend met Jimin's aunt at the intersection. A few words awakened him. How could it be such a coincidence that he went abroad on business just before his child's surgery? Combined with Taehyun's recent unusual behavior, the friend panicked and rushed home. He went to the other bedroom and rummaged around, quickly finding Taehyun's passport. There was only one truth. The friend immediately contacted the assistant and told him not to lie. The friend and his son rushed to the hospital. Jimin waited on the other end, but his aunt complained that Taehyun had let down such an important day and didn't even call. Jimin defended her boyfriend. He had just arrived in the US and was suffering from jet lag. She could not find a better man than Taehyun. After an unknown period of time, the doctor finally came out and announced that the surgery was a great success. However, the baby needed to be transferred to a sterile room for a few days to observe for any rejection. Jimin asked with tears in her eyes about the donor. The doctor assured her that everything was fine. The whole family hugged each other and wept with joy. The baby's life touched the hearts of everyone. The father and son visited Taehyun as soon as possible. As soon as he opened his eyes, his friend yells at him, "You bad guy, how could you keep this from me?" His wife never leaves his side, but Junwoo is constantly picking on her, saying mean things just to drive her away. Life is in the countdown. Divorce is the last thing Junwoo can do for his wife. Seon understands her husband's feelings, but she still can't let go. When the father sees this, he decides to have a private chat with Junwoo. Junwoo is aware of his illness and is determined to break up. He even asks his father-in-law to take his wife back to her parents' house. Hearing these words, Seon wanted to cry but had no tears. The father-in-law didn't want to force his daughter to do anything. The pain of having a sick heart was even more excruciating than the pain in his body. He hoped that he would pull himself together and actively seek treatment. Junwoo couldn't hear a word he said. He just wanted to atone for his sins by dying. Soon after the father and daughter left, Junwoo suffered from another kind of pain due to the painkillers. His mother felt strange. If the operation went well, why was he still in so much pain? The doctor knew what was going on but didn't tell the patient the truth. Jinky felt so much pain. She was angry that her daughter-in-law didn't stay at the hospital with Junwoo. As soon as she got home, she scolded her daughter-in-law for leaving Junwoo alone in the hospital room. Seon felt so wrong that she couldn't help but argue with her mother-in-law. Sura quickly pulled her mother into the room and begged her not to quarrel with her sister-in-law. Jimin no longer hated Junwoo. Instead, she hoped that he would recover as quickly as her child. At this time, she still didn't know that her boyfriend had saved her son. They had passed each other at the elevator. Jimin vaguely heard the voice of her friend. She ran down but couldn't find her friend anywhere. Taehyun was finally transferred to a regular ward. No surprise, he can be discharged next Monday. Just then, Jimin's aunt called and said that someone had seen them father and son at the hospital. Her friend was so scared that she kept shaking her head and insisted that she hadn't been there, just to be on the safe side. Taehyun asked the two of them not to come again. He planned to never tell anyone about saving the child. He was afraid that Jimin's family would have a psychological burden. The kind-hearted Taehyun was always used to thinking of others. Junwoo, who is in the terminal stage of cancer, has already been discharged from the hospital. Naeun holds a teddy bear and tells her father that if he blows on it, it will not hurt. Seon feels bad when she sees this. No one can understand her feelings at this moment. Junwoo still has the same idea, to get rid of his wife and quietly wait for death. Seon is exhausted. Is she the only one who is troubled? Why should I do what you say? Junwoo proposes divorce again. You were the one who proposed it in the first place. I don't need any sympathy. Jimin is extremely grateful to the donor. She asks the doctor to convey her gratitude. From the day her son had the operation until now, her boyfriend hasn't called once. Jimin is feeling aggrieved when her phone finally rings. Taehyun lies in his hospital gown, saying that he has just arrived abroad and is too busy. Jimin doesn't pick up on the flaws. She is now particularly content. Junwoo's life is in a mess. He really wants to escape to a place with no one and wait for death. Sura chases after him and sees her brother's lonely back. Her heart aches. Jinky doesn't know that her son's cancer has reached an advanced stage. When she hears the quarrel, she scolds her daughter-in-law. Can't you put up with it a little? After major surgery, it's inevitable that someone will be a little sensitive. Seon has nowhere to pour out her grievances. Her husband wants to get rid of her every day. Junwoo goes to the hospital alone to inject painkillers. He learns that his son has been transferred from the sterile room to the observation room, but he sighs with regret. He wants to see his own flesh and blood so much, but he doesn't have the face-to-face with it. Looking at the baby in good condition, the whole family feels relieved. The little life is so tenacious, overcoming one difficulty after another. After a period of time, Taehyun was finally able to be discharged from the hospital. As a result, he was just bumped into by Junwoo. Junwoo immediately stopped the car. Although he only glanced at it, he was absolutely sure that the person was Taehyun. It was clear that Taehyun had lied. He had never gone on a business trip abroad. With all kinds of doubts, He went to the hospital department and asked the receptionist. The nurse's answer confirmed his suspicions. He tried every means to take over the company from someone else's grandfather, but the other party saved his son. Recalling the past, Junwoo felt ashamed and ironic at this moment. So he was cursed by heaven. Back home, Taehan had a big appetite. Unfortunately, just as he had taken a few bites of his rice, Jimin's aunt arrived uninvited. So he panicked and hid in the bedroom. The older unmarried girl has always wanted to force a marriage, and Taehan's friend has become her boyfriend. Taehan suddenly wants to go to the bathroom. Taking advantage of the inattentiveness, he quickly sneaks into the bathroom, afraid of making a sound. He doesn't even dare to lock the door, but the sound of the flush is too loud, scaring Jack so much that he spits out the food in his mouth. The aunt walks into the bathroom and happens to hit Taehan's wound. It is clear that it can no longer be hidden. The aunt is so happy that she can't stop smiling. As soon as she saw her brother, she praised him for being so lucky, but when it came to the crucial moment, she hesitated. Then she ran to Jimin's room and touched Jimin's head. Full of envy, Jack was miserable. In order to sign a confidentiality agreement, he agreed to get married at the end of the year. He glared fiercely at Taehan, but his son said from the side, "Father will understand when he gets married." That day, Junwoo actually got drunk. Seon couldn't stand it anymore. She knew that alcohol was not allowed during chemotherapy. Junwoo suddenly came to his senses and said that he didn't want to live because of you. Seeing your face feels like someone is strangling my throat. I beg you, don't torture me anymore. Pack your things and get out of this house. After saying this, Junwoo got up and went to the bathroom. Seon froze in place and then fell onto the bed with a thud, tears streaming down her face. She was afraid that her husband would continue to torture himself by harming himself. The agonizing Junwoo wanted to take painkillers but threw them away. He curled up on the floor, convinced that he deserved to be damned and that he should not live in this world. After a night of struggling, Seon made a difficult decision. She would leave with her daughter. But first, she had to tell her mother-in-law the truth. Someone had to take care of her husband instead of her. Junwoo was in a dilemma. At noon, he tentatively asked his mother what would happen if he failed to survive the operation. Jinky told her son not to say such frightening things. If the children die first, can they still eat and sleep? Watching his aging mother, Junwoo swallowed back the words on the tip of his tongue. While his mother went to get some soup, he hastily wiped away the tears that had slipped down his face. That night, Seon could tell that her husband was unable to tell her the truth, so she decided to do it for him. But it was impossible to keep it a secret forever, so she first asked Sura to get the heart medicine. Jinky sensed that something was wrong and refused to take the medicine. She pushed her daughter away and forced her daughter-in-law to explain. Seon confessed that Junwoo was unable to undergo surgery. This news was like a bolt from the blue. Jinky kept asking over and over again, getting more and more agitated. She told her not to lie. Seon explained with tears in her eyes that Junwoo had deliberately concealed the news for fear of shocking you. Jinky completely broke down, shouting that this could never happen. She also yelled that she wanted to go to the hospital and confirm it with the doctor. After a while, Jinky woke up from her coma. As soon as she opened her eyes, she wanted to see her son, Junwoo. She cried and apologized to her mother. Seon, what they said is true. I have reached a point where surgery is no longer possible. The mother was heartbroken, hugging her son and crying, "My child will never get sick. He is so good. He has been my pride since he was little. I can't get enough of him." While talking, Junwoo couldn't stand the pain and didn't want his mother to see him like this. He turned around and left. Jinky chased after him and was stopped by her daughter, and learned that her son had to take medicine to relieve the pain. She just sat down on the floor. The next day, Seon finally agreed to divorce her husband, but she was afraid that her mother-in-law couldn't handle the blow. Junwoo told her to go with peace of mind and not to worry about anything. Learning that her son had terminal cancer, she beat her chest in grief. Junwoo, who had gone downstairs to pour water, heard his mother's crying. He was so sad that he covered his mouth. In the face of life and death, all comfort seems pale and powerless. The couple reached an agreement and quietly left with their daughter. Naeun thought it was just like any other day and went to kindergarten happily, saying goodbye to her father. Jinky apologized to her daughter-in-law for not knowing that she had been carrying so much alone. From now on, they would work together to save Junwoo. Seon was afraid to say anything as her eyes filled with tears. Then she asked her husband to keep his promise and get well after the divorce. She could not let him give up on himself. Junwoo nodded and promised. In the afternoon, while everyone was away, he started packing. He looked at the desk and remembered the scenes of their love. At home, he left the house he had lived in for 9 years with a heavy heart. Taehan also learned from Seon's father about Junwoo's current situation. After being apart for many days, they finally saw their boyfriend Jimin. They were overjoyed. People in love feel especially happy just by sitting together. When he returned home, Junwoo realized that his wife had already left. Looking at the empty room, his heart was filled with mixed emotions. His mother doesn't let Junwoo feel down and encourages him to go see his son. A baby that young can overcome the disease, so he can too. Junwoo is hesitant. The bond between them is so strong that he can't help but think about the child. Jinky soon hears the heartbreaking truth from Seon. Without aggressive cancer treatment, Her son will only live for 6 months at most. She begs the doctor with tears in her eyes to save her son. Jinky then goes to church and wants to confess the sin she has committed in her life. At this moment, she was willing to try anything. The kind Jimin's mother and aunt helped her come up with a plan. At the same time, they collected many folk remedies for cancer treatment. The proud Ginky was full of gratitude. The next day, the couple went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to go through the formalities. Sian didn't know if this was the right thing to do. She hardened her heart and left without turning back. Junwoo looked at her back and was stunned. Just then, he received a call from his mother. The child's grandmother applied for visiting hours for him. It's at 5 p.m. this afternoon. After confirming that there was no one else, Junwoo finally gathered his courage and went to the hospital. He was just about to go in when he looked up and saw Taehyun, the man who selflessly saved his son. Jimin arrived shortly after, and seeing the dying man, she had let go of all her resentment. Junwoo, however, had no face to stay. The kind-hearted Jimin chased after him and shouted that he could come over whenever he wanted to see his child. Junwoo did not dare to linger and fled in a panic. Memories bring harm to everyone. The young couple scrambled for the last half of the rice cake, but the chopsticks splashed onto the boyfriend's body. Jimin hurriedly wiped it off, but unexpectedly touched something strange. Taehyun got an idea and lied that he had done a good deed when he was in the United States and had been stabbed. Jimin believed it and had no idea that Taehyun had left the wound when he saved her son. As soon as she returned home, she described the dangers Taehyun encountered on his business trip. Her aunt, who knew about it, just laughed. For her own marriage, she had to keep her mouth shut. On the Mid-Autumn Festival, Junwoo, who was terminally ill with cancer, finally confessed to his mother the fact that he had divorced his wife, and that he was not qualified to keep someone else's family together and give up the custody of his adopted daughter. Jinky found it hard to accept that her biological grandson was with Jimin, and that her granddaughter, who had been raised by her since childhood, had also been taken away. She immediately asked Sian out. No matter what, she could not abandon her husband at this time. You should understand that Junwoo doesn't really want you to go. You have to give up because of your guilt. Sian pushes away her mother-in-law's hand. A problem between a husband and wife cannot be explained in a few words. Meanwhile, Sora, who is delivering medicine, discovers that her brother has a fever and has lost consciousness. Sian soon receives a call from Sura. She can no longer remain calm. The doctor decides to transfer the patient to the intensive care unit. Sian quickly rushes over. Mother-in-law is resentful and says some harsh things to her. You abandoned Junwoo heartlessly. Why are you still here? Sian did not argue and walked to the other side to wait silently. Taehyun came to his girlfriend's house with his best friend to celebrate the holiday. Jimin's father was upset because he lost the game. Only his aunt dared to gossip about her brother behind her back. Jimin soon learned about Junwoo's situation. Being kind-hearted, she was worried after all. The other party is the father of the child. Taehyun wanted to comfort his girlfriend, but he heard his drunk aunt talking nonsense upstairs, so he quickly rushed over to stop her. Seeing that the secret was about to be revealed, he dragged her to her room. Jack reminded her not to forget the confidentiality agreement, or else the promise of getting married at the end of the year would be cancelled. But his aunt was all love-struck and asked him what he planned to do to keep her mouth shut. Why not just use your mouth? Jack is willing to do anything for his brother, so he had to use the handsome guy tactic. After a night of treatment, Junwoo finally got out of danger. After mother-in-law left, Sian sneaked in to visit. She begged her husband to remember their promise and to accept treatment and live a good life. Junwoo closes his eyes and pretends to sleep until Sian leaves, when he reveals a reluctant expression. Junwoo doesn't want to stay in the hospital for another second and yells for discharge that day. Jimin arrives at the hospital and never expects that her boyfriend is the kind donor. Hearing Jimin's voice, Taehyun is scared and doesn't know what to do. The other person shouts for the doctor while pulling back the curtain. Taehyun looks through the crack to make sure his girlfriend has left. Today was the day he was supposed to remove the bandages. He almost let the cat out of the bag. The baby's transplant surgery was a great success. He is expected to be discharged next week. The whole family is overjoyed. Thinking about what his ex-wife said, the terminally ill Junwoo reads an anti-cancer book for the first time. In order to help her son cheer up, his mother picks Naeun up from kindergarten. Junwoo really misses his daughter Sian after the divorce and agrees to let the child stay overnight. Naeun doesn't know that her parents have divorced, and asks her mother to hurry home. Sian has nowhere to turn to for her sorrows. Naeun is the family's happy pill and Junwoo's rare smile. As Junwoo looks at his adopted daughter sleeping at night, he can't help but think of his own flesh and blood. After much thought, he decides to go to the hospital to see his son, so he gathers his courage and dials Jimin's phone. Jimin no longer bears a grudge against him and creates some alone time for the father and son. The baby babbles as if sensing something. Junwoo couldn't imagine that such a cute baby had gone through so much hardship, facing his son, whom he was reluctant to recognize in the past. Junwoo's tears blurred his eyes unconsciously. He couldn't help but touch his little face. He cried and laughed. It wasn't until he heard the door open that Junwoo hastily wiped away his tears. Junwoo thought that Jimin knew that it was Taehyun who had saved his son, so he said that he should kneel down and thank the other person. Jimin was confused and asked him what he meant. When he learned the truth, Jimin couldn't believe it. He kept asking for confirmation. Junwoo was also very surprised. That man was even more selfless than he had imagined. Recalling the strange behavior of the other person during the surgery, Jimin suddenly woke up from her dream. Her mother happened to come over to take over the shift and saw her daughter standing there motionless. Jimin said that she had to go out for a while and would be right back. Soon, she received confirmation. How could she repay this kindness? Then Jimin came to her boyfriend's company like a lost soul. Seon happened to be there as well. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Jimin could not utter a word except for the word cry. Seon was puzzled by the scene when she happened to meet Jimin's brother-in-law, so she asked what was going on at home. She had just seen Jimin crying in front of Taehyun. Out of curiosity, Manager Kim came to the office and stood at the door to eavesdrop. He heard everything with his own ears and his trembling legs were shocked. Just then, he met his assistant again, so he grabbed the other person and asked if he knew the truth. How could there be such a shocking thing? The assistant emphasized that this was a secret and must not be told. As a result, as soon as Section Chief Kim turned around, he called his wife to tip her off. At this time, Jimin had already been crying uncontrollably. After crying for a while, the two agreed to keep the secret from their elders. Back at the hospital, Jimin stared at the baby in rapt attention. Then she asked her mother what she would do if she knew who the donor was. Her mother thought that she would have to regard the other person as a benefactor for the rest of her life. Hearing this, Jimin's nose became a little sour and she could not help but shed tears. After her mother left, she had nowhere to turn to, so she talked to her baby about how lucky she was. Jack had to fall in love with Jimin's aunt in order to help Taehyun keep the secret. The older Yumi flirted in various ways. She drank cup after cup of wine and looked amazing. She didn't even notice her hair was on fire. Luckily, Jack was quick-eyed and quick-handed, so she was able to save her hair. The excited Yumi forgot about the confidentiality agreement. Her brother heard everything, and when he asked, the son-in-law who knew the truth told him the truth. When Yumi woke up in the morning, her mind was a blank. She just wondered why her hair smelled burnt. Taehyun soon learned about the incident. When he was upset, he received a call from his girlfriend's father. The two met at the office. The old man didn't know how to express his gratitude. He had sacrificed so much along the way. At the same time, he felt sorry for his deceased parents. Then he grabbed Taehyun's hand and said, "I will regard you as a benefactor for the rest of my life." This was the reason Taehyun desperately wanted to hide and hoped that the old man would regard him as his son-in-law. A son-in-law is like a son. Saving the family is only natural. The old man is deeply moved because his youngest daughter has met a good man. His mother also feels that Jimin is very lucky and asks where she heard about it. Learning that it is the child's father, the mother is especially shocked. After meeting his son, Junwoo, who has a terminal illness, has hope to live. He walks down the street, carefully experiencing the smoke of the world. But after eating a few bites of food, the pain starts to become unbearable. Maybe only when you are sick do you understand the meaning of being alive. In order to cheer her son up, Jinky takes their granddaughter home without saying goodbye. Junwoo feels uncomfortable about this. His ex-wife feels bad about it and insists on sending Naeun away. Naeun doesn't understand the meaning of divorce. She just wants to stay with her parents. Junwoo, however, breaks away from the child's hand and walks away without looking back. At this moment, his heart is about to break. If he could live his life over again, he would never betray his family again. The next day, Seon receives a call from the kindergarten. She hurried over there and saw her daughter crying uncontrollably. The teacher didn't know the reason either and couldn't get anything out of her, so she took Naeun to her favorite dessert shop. After patiently guiding Naeun, she finally revealed her heart. Today, she heard from a friend that parents who don't love each other get divorced and separate. Seon, who deeply loves her husband, really wants to give a reasonable explanation. That night, Jimin's family gathered together and decided to hold a Thanksgiving meeting. Taehyun arrived on time for the meeting. As soon as he opened the door, the family expressed their gratitude to him. That day, Jimin met Seon and stopped her. Even though she was also a victim, she felt sorry for Seon and didn't tell her that she had divorced her husband. She no longer holds a grudge against Jimin and would have insisted on giving birth to the baby herself. Jimin stood up and apologized again. She sincerely hopes that Junwoo will get better. Seon smiled and said goodbye. She also hopes that her husband will actively fight the cancer. Unfortunately, Junwoo's condition has not improved at all. He crawled out of the bathroom and tried to take his medicine, but he accidentally spilled it all over the floor. The pain was unbearable, so his mother came in. Jinky quickly picked up the painkillers on the floor and fed them to her son. The patient, who had been holding on, could no longer hold on. He hugged his mother. I don't know how long it took, but Junwoo finally fell asleep. His mother's heart was bleeding and she deeply blamed herself for committing too many sins, which caused her son to get sick. So she sat by the bed and kept saying sorry over and over again. When Junwoo woke up in the morning, he immediately noticed his mother sleeping on the floor. At this age, she should be enjoying her life, but now she worries and strains every day because of his illness. Seeing that her son has woken up, Jinky rushes downstairs to get vegetable juice. His mother knows that Junwoo misses the baby. Junwoo tells his mother to do whatever she thinks is best, but then secretly looks at his son's photos. At the same time, He also misses his ex-wife and adopted daughter. After their divorce, Naeun is often awakened by nightmares, dreaming that her father has disappeared. She even wets the bed. Seon knows that she misses her father, grandmother and aunt, so she decided to send the child to stay for a few days. The two stood in the doorway talking, not realizing that Ginky had also picked up her grandson. Seon's mood was mixed. Junwoo didn't dare look her in the eye. She sighed that the family was broad-minded. Wishing you a good mood and a speedy recovery. Junwoo stood in place, watching the other person leave. When she got home, her mother sighed that the baby looked exactly like Junwoo when he was a child. Junwoo's eyes were full of his son's bloodline, so this was the feeling. Afterwards, his mother was busy preparing formula milk. This was Junwoo's second time holding a baby. He suddenly remembered the scene when he forced Jimin to have an abortion. At this moment, he regretted it. He felt that he was cruel and heartless at the time, and was single-mindedly pursuing success. Seeing Junwoo, who was lost in thought, his mother thought that he wanted to personally take care of the baby. Junwoo felt that he was not qualified and hurriedly left. After a short separation of one day, Jimin missed her son so much that as soon as she returned, she hugged him close. The thing she least regretted in her life was giving birth to her son. Jimin's career is booming. She was invited to appear on a TV show over the weekend. The whole family came out to see her off. Junwoo's painful expression scared his adopted daughter. She cried non-stop, worried and scared. Although there is a grandmother and an aunt at home, she still wants her mother by her side. Seon couldn't wait long before she wanted to come and pick up her child. Naeun, however, begged her not to go. Father needs us. Seon had no choice but to leave directly by herself. Naeun was worried about her father and insisted on staying. That night, father and daughter watched a DVD together and talked about their many wishes. They said they would go to the beach and climb mountains when father got better. Junwoo couldn't hold back any longer and rushed to the bathroom to wash his face. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to help his daughter fulfill even one of her wishes. He had hoped that active treatment would prolong his life, but unfortunately his condition continued to deteriorate. Now the doctor was at his wit's end. He hoped that he and his family could discuss whether or not to continue treatment. Junwoo, at a loss, walked into a church and sincerely repented. The attending doctor, not knowing that Seon had divorced her husband, informed him of the situation. She staggered out of the consultation room. Originally agreeing to divorce was just going along with her husband's wishes. She hoped that he would actively seek treatment. Then she cried and asked her father what to do. The wise father told her to pretend not to know. The patient's will to live is very important. Don't give up until the last moment. Seon followed her father's advice and dared not show it in front of her husband. She used Naeun's excuse that she was feeling bad and proposed going on vacation together. Junwoo remembered his daughter's wish and decided to go to the beach first. Then they went to an island. Happiness is actually that simple. The family of three was smiling happily, especially Junwoo. He wished he could freeze this moment. Afterwards, he asked his daughter what she wanted to be when she grew up. Naeun said she wanted to be as pretty and kind as her mother and marry someone like her father. Junwoo felt ashamed. What kind of a man was he? After the 2-day, one-night vacation, Junwoo returned home to rest. His mother stood by the bed encouraging him to try not to let his voice crack with tears. Jimin no longer holds a grudge against Junwoo and even hopes that he can overcome his illness like his son. Junwoo occasionally looks at the baby photos and is extremely grateful to Taehyun. He finally calls, but still doesn't have the courage to say the words thank you. The young couple understands why he called but is afraid to speak. Something good happens at Jimin's house. Since his aunt got drunk and slept outside, his brother is very angry. Jimin's father then called Jack over to his house and scolded him. Yumi didn't expect Jack's boyfriend to propose on the spot. On the day of the wedding, Taehyun didn't see the long wedding dress. He slammed the car door. Yumi was so angry that she scolded Jimin as well. A friend suggested that she simply tear it off and change it to a short wedding dress. The old man stood in the doorway, smiling and welcoming the guests, but he was very angry inside. The young couple entered as the best man and maid of honor, but the brother-in-law heckled them, asking them to dance. The handsome couple seemed like a beautiful sight, instantly igniting the atmosphere of the venue. The bride, holding her brother's hand, said thank you for the first time and promised to behave after the wedding. The old man was moved. Less than 10 minutes later, his younger sister made a fool of herself again, and she was so hungry that she fainted. A wedding is really thrilling. Jimin was lucky enough to receive the bouquet before the honeymoon. The bride took her sister-in-law's hand and thanked her for being as tolerant as a mother. Afterwards, her brother-in-law took advantage of the alcohol to ask Taehyun what he was thinking. Taehyun seemed to have no plans in that regard. Jimin was a little disappointed. It is said that you must get married within 6 months of receiving the bouquet. The parents were counting the gifts in the room. Jinky even gave a 5 million won red envelope. Jinky told them not to feel burdened. He hoped that the two families would get along like relatives in the future. Junwoo, who was in the final stages of cancer, decided to go to a country nursing home to live. Before leaving, he went to meet the savior of his son. He admired Taehyun's open-mindedness and willingness to mingle with the workers. Junwoo's 1,000 words turned into a thank you. Then he found Jimin and confessed that during the year on Jeju Island, he never thought of playing with her feelings. He knew it was wrong. but he did things that hurt the two women. Junwoo was grateful to the other party for giving birth to his child. The kind-hearted Jimin had long since let go and told him to focus on his treatment and not worry about the child. The ex-wife sees them off at the station, both forced to smile. They don't know if they will see each other again after this parting. Just as they are about to say goodbye, Seon receives a call from the hospital. The doctor informs her that she is pregnant. She feels unbelievable. She dares not tell Junwoo for fear that it will be another false hope. Seon hesitates for a long time before saying goodbye. Junwoo vaguely senses something unusual about her. He has never believed in miracles. Subsequently, Seon rushes to the obstetrics and gynecology department and describes her situation to the doctor. She felt like she was dreaming as she was infertile. She repeatedly asked the doctor to confirm her description, so she immediately contacted her ex-husband. But the words stuck in her throat. Then she went to the bathroom alone and looked through the maternity handbook. Looking at the precious life, she could no longer hold back her grief and cried uncontrollably. Jimin, who had come to the hospital for a prenatal checkup, heard her crying. When she was curious, Seon came out. Her eyes were red. It was only after her husband reminded her that she realized who it was. When she got home, Seon told her father that she was pregnant. Her father was so excited that tears came to his eyes. This is nothing short of a miracle. I never thought I would live to see my daughter pregnant. Seon wanted to tell Junwoo face to face, hoping that the hard-won child would encourage him to overcome his illness. Seon's crying in the bathroom soon reached the ears of her mother-in-law. Jinki was afraid that her daughter-in-law might commit suicide or get sick. Seon had already arrived at a sanatorium in the countryside. Junwoo couldn't believe his ears. The couple had waited 9 years for this child. What reason did he have to give up hope? All thanks turned into hugs. Junwoo had long since repented. He had been like a fool, only fighting for power. Only when he fell ill did he understand that ordinary happiness was the most precious. Seon was in tears. She believed that it was never too late for a prodigal son to return. The couple embraced again. Junwoo's tears slipped from the corner of his eyes. The unmarried mother on the other side decides to force her boyfriend to marry her. Her aunt gets married. Her eldest sister is pregnant with twins. It's not true to say that there's no rush. Jimin opens the cake, and Taehan instantly understands, because there are some things that a man must do. Taehan knows that his girlfriend has suffered from not registering last time, so he decides to get married first and register afterwards. Then he drags Jimin to where her father works. He wants to get the approval of his future father-in-law. The old man turned pale and went back to his office to get the application form he had prepared. Who would refuse such a good son-in-law? The lovers finally got married. After completing the formalities, Jimin cried with happiness. Jinki couldn't help contacting her daughter-in-law to find out what had happened to her. Seon then came to the house to announce the good news of her pregnancy in person. Jinki was so happy that she burst into tears. As a woman, she knew that she had been pushing too hard before. Recently, she had been going to church every day to repent. This was truly a miracle. So Jinki grabbed her daughter-in-law's hand and thanked her for saving her son. Without treatment, Junwoo's condition was surprisingly under control. It turns out that the thing people fear most is mental illness. Soon after, the group held a marathon competition. Unexpectedly, Junwoo also came. Jinki stayed by his side the whole time, trying to encourage his son to persist to the end. Taehan, who was running in front of him, suddenly turned around and came to Junwoo's side. He took over from Jinki and accompanied Junwoo for the rest of the way. The two of them appeared in the sight of people holding hands with each other, and everyone cheered enthusiastically. Okay, that's the end of today's story. Thank you for your company and support. See you next time.